In the mountains near the labyrinth, at Luke's house, 15-year-old Luke exclaims with excitement that he has done it. He has obtained status magic. His status screen reveals impressive stats and the new skill, status magic. Luke relaxes among stacks of books, admitting he struggles with such simple magic and lacks competence. Yet, he smiles confidently, knowing he can finally take the entrance exam for the Conqueror Academy. The academy is introduced as a place designed to train professionals called conquerors, who conquer labyrinths. To get admitted, candidates must clear 3 exams: status exam, academic, and practical skills. Luke recalls the reason he aimed to become a conqueror 5 years ago. His beloved conqueror parents never returned home after a powerful dragon emerged from the labyrinth. A young Luke, tearful and scared, wishes he were stronger so he could search for them himself. Suddenly, Luke drops a book, wincing as it hits him. It's his father's magic book, titled The Path to Becoming a Conqueror, an introductory guide to the profession. Realizing that if he becomes stronger and a conqueror, he can search for his parents and earn a living. Luke's eyes well up with tears as hope fills his heart. To become as strong as his parents, Luke knows normal magic won't suffice. He vows to study and improve his magic, training every day in the nearby labyrinth. 5 years later, he counts out 100,000 gold, having gathered enough money for the exam, carrying heavy luggage for a long journey. He notes that running at full speed from here will get him to town in about an hour. With determination, Luke sets off toward the Conqueror Academy, his figure dashing through the mountainous path. His sudden movement startles nearby animals, and townspeople greet his arrival with awe and excitement. Meanwhile, a confident young man named Fasner impresses the crowd with a powerful fireball. Hailed as a genius mage and the son of a prestigious noble family, he boasts about becoming the highest-ranked conqueror in the future, dismissing others with a smug smile. The crowd cheers wildly for Fasner's sensational debut, calling him amazing and impressive. Luke, carrying his heavy load, watches from a distance as Fasner basks in the attention. Despite the spectacle, Luke quietly asks a passerby for directions to the Conqueror Academy, resolved to make his own mark at the exam venue. The crowd notices Luke burdened with an enormous amount of luggage, immediately labeling him a country bumpkin. They wonder what remote region he could have come from, especially since strange leaves are still attached to his gear. Fasner, coughing lightly, points out that the Conqueror Academy lies straight down the road. When Luke asks why, Fasner coldly replies that Luke is going to fail. Fasner boasts that he will be the only one to pass the exam, having received a gifted education from childhood to become a conqueror. Despite his confidence, he admits to being scared of his own talent. He acknowledges the city's level is different but warns that Luke's problem is he can't afford to retake the exam if he fails. Luke solemnly states he must become a conqueror and find his parents, but he cannot afford to become a freestyle conqueror. The crowd reacts with shock and disgust at the mention of freestyle conqueror. Whispering among themselves, Luke, confused by the atmosphere, wonders if he said something strange. He calmly expresses gratitude for the lessons he's received. Fasner, horrified, protests when Luke reveals he will eat a strange food as a gesture of thanks. But Luke insists this is his gratitude. Luke explains that people in the city are kind and nice, recalling how someone taught him the way and even refused a gift. Fasner, bewildered, questions what kind of person Luke is. The scene shifts to the Grand Conqueror Academy building, marking the next stage of Luke's journey. Luke sits among other examinees in a large hall, holding a quill as the proctor instructs them to write their status in the status chart before the test begins. He carefully copies the information he saw with status magic. The proctor warns no whispering as some students ogle her, distracted by her appearance. She announces they will start collecting the charts. Luke looks puzzled but attentive. The proctor scrutinizes Luke's written status, asking if there are any mistakes. He confidently replies there should be none. Internally, Luke notes that not using honorifics with adults is nerve-wracking but necessary to avoid revealing his position to enemies. The proctor seems to want to say something but instead says, "Well then, let's start the exam." Luke watches, curious. The scene shifts to the academic exam as exam papers are distributed with strict instructions not to open them until the signal. Luke feels the pressure, recalling his continuous study of academic and practical skills. Even while struggling to master status magic, he hopes everything will go smoothly as he prepares to write. Outside, the practical exam instructor Suero introduces the next test, explaining there are 5 targets 20 meters away that must be hit with magic. But magic used is limited to 5 times. Luke hears whispers from other students about how only 3 people passed last year because of him, and that this year's examiners are all strict. Luke tenses, readying himself for the challenge ahead. The first target stands at a daunting distance, and students admit that even activating magic strains their limits. One student mutters that this is their maximum. Fasner scoffs at the hesitation, challenging the fear and promising to demonstrate with a confident smile. "Watch carefully, everyone. I'll show you an example. Fazner conjures a massive fireball, drawing gasps and exclamations of amazement from the crowd. With a commanding gesture, he launches the blazing sphere toward the targets. The fireball streaks through the air, striking multiple targets with explosive force. Observers question if he is truly an examinee. The practical exam instructor notes that Fazner fired 5 times and hit 3 targets. Though he rates the performance as only SOSO, students are stunned that Fazner hit 3 targets before even enrolling, marveling at his accuracy. The instructor calls for the next examinee, while internally acknowledging Fazner as the most promising candidate this year, though the overall group seems unimpressive. Luke steps forward, asking if he can use magic other than Fireball. The instructor questions his choice but insists that Fireball is the safest beginner spell. Luke reflects that no matter how powerful an attack is, it's meaningless if it misses. Determined, he prepares to prove himself under the strict rules. The practical exam instructor watches intently, taking notes as a powerful attack forms. Luke prepares to launch a devastating spell aimed at the central target, intending to use the blast wave to incinerate all neighboring targets simultaneously. The crowd gasps in shock and awe at the overwhelming force he unleashes. Luke's focus sharpens as he channels his magic into a single fireball, a spell designed to explode on impact with immense power. The instructor reacts with disbelief, unable to hide his surprise at the sheer intensity of the attack. He commands the spell with precision, shouting the incantation, "Flame Burst," as the magical circle glows fiercely in front of him. The destructive energy surges forward, shattering the ground and sending debris flying. The explosion erupts violently, forcing the crowd to scramble for safety as the shockwave tears through the targets. Spectators are thrown off their feet, some exclaiming in amazement and fear. The impact leaves scorched remains where the targets once stood, marking Luke's spell as a spectacular display of raw magical power. The crowd recoils in shock at the massive crater left behind, voices rising in confusion and fear. One student gasps loudly, questioning the overwhelming magic, while Luke remains calm and collected, quietly observing the aftermath. The shocked student demands an explanation for the immense power, struggling to comprehend it. Luke calmly admits he intended to cast a strong spell, but the others panic, insisting it was far too powerful. The instructor reassures Luke that the test is perfect and he doesn't need to repeat the next 4 attempts. He explains the goal is to hit 5 targets in succession to confirm accuracy, and Luke's feat exempts him from the usual restrictions. Luke processes this new understanding, realizing the true purpose of the test. Luke reflects on his mistaken assumption about the test's criteria, apologizing for the damage caused. The instructor laughs warmly, praising Luke as highly promising despite his unconventional approach, calling him a strange but talented individual. The next day, the announcement of results draws a crowd. Fazner confidently boasts about passing with ease, dismissing any chance of failure. Observers recognize Luke as the country bumpkin from before, and Fazner contemplates approaching him, acknowledging Luke as the most impressive after himself. Fazner calls out to Luke, praising his impressive magic during the test and asking if he passed too. Luke struggles to see the results through the crowd. Fazner admits he can now acknowledge Luke as his rival and looks forward to their future encounters. The crowd parts thanks to Fazner's presence, allowing Luke to finally see the results. His eyes widen in shock as he discovers he did not pass the exam, despite the earlier praise. Inside a building, Luke nervously tries to get someone's attention. A concerned woman asks if he is okay, explaining she understands everyone has their own circumstances and cannot ask him to wait half a year for the next opportunity. She admits she is surprised by the situation. A young woman admits that becoming a freestyle conqueror will undoubtedly be challenging. The narration reveals this feared and neglected profession. Luke, with a weary expression, reflects that he ended up becoming a freestyle conqueror. Around him, others mock him quietly, calling him pitiful and a freestyle one. The narration laments that Luke seems to have fallen to the bottom of life, wondering what misfortune will come to him next. The scene closes on a large building under a clear sky. 5 years ago, Luke's parents, who were conquerors, never returned home. He trained intensively in the dungeon near their mountain house. Determined to find them, he took the Conqueror School entrance exam to become a conqueror. Confident after passing the written exam and practical test, he awaited the results. At the Runork Union, Luke receives his exam results and sees he failed. He reacts with disbelief and frustration, lamenting that he must become a harsh, self-taught conqueror. Luke wonders what his future holds now. The scene shifts to the Conqueror School acceptance announcement venue, where Luke questions the reason for his failure. He is confused by the phrase, "unable to use status magic." The practical exam instructor explains that status rankings are normally written in alphabets, with S as the highest and I the lowest. Fazner celebrates passing with cheers from the crowd. The instructor points out Luke wrote strange numbers on his status form. Although writing the wrong status isn't a big issue since it is checked later, it implies a problem for Luke. The instructor explains that no matter how many times the inspection machine checks, it only displays an impossible rank, SS. He wonders if this is a character corruption. Since no such rank exists, Luke, sweating nervously, realizes this unprecedented situation means he hasn't actually learned status magic. Panic rises as he questions if what he learned was truly status magic. The instructor adds that Luke's written exam score was also low. Luke, shocked, asks if the written exam was no good too. The instructor recalls a question about how to deal with a strong enemy and asks if Luke remembers what he wrote. Luke reflects on his detailed answer about using terrain to hide, aiming outside the monster's field of vision, and dividing fighting methods into patterns, based on his daily dungeon fights near his mountain home. The instructor bluntly states the correct answer was simply run away. Luke reacts with disbelief, asking if that is really enough. The instructor laughs and explains Luke's answer was aimed at an advanced level. But this is just an entrance exam. A female examiner chimes in, saying Luke's answer would be rejected as, "Can a rookie do this?" The instructor then tells Luke he failed this time but encourages him to learn status magic properly and try again. Luke, contemplative, thanks him for explaining the reason for his failure. The instructor assures Luke that if they are evaluating him this much, he definitely has the potential to become a first-class conqueror, giving him a reassuring pat on the shoulder. The instructor smiles and encourages Luke to do his best. Luke resolves firmly to pass next time. Despite the heavy cost of the entrance exam fee and living expenses draining his savings, he knows he has no choice but to try again. Luke registers as a self-taught conqueror at the nearby union in Runark Town. The receptionist Aaron warns him that being self-taught is tough and encourages him to live strongly. Luke senses something ominous in her words as she immediately offers him a request. Aaron explains that self-taught conquerors aren't trusted because they haven't graduated from conqueror school. Without a guild, they start at the lowest F rank. Requests are concentrated in guilds, so for a self-taught conqueror, she can only offer one request. She hands Luke a single request titled Stake Pulling in a C-rank dungeon. Dungeons have dungeon stakes that, when pulled, stop monster appearances. Unlike the flashy job of defeating monsters, stake pulling is dull post-processing work. The scene contrasts the low-rank stake pulling party with the main party battling monsters. Aaron hesitates, warning that a 5,000 gold reward for a C-rank dungeon seems dangerous and not worth it. Luke smiles wryly, saying 5,000 gold barely covers a day's living, and decides to take the request anyway. He explains he must accept requests and rank up first to get better ones. Aaron encourages him warmly to do his best, blushing as she playfully scolds him. The next day, in front of the dungeon, the stake-pulling party gathers at 9 o'clock. The leader confirms all 5 members are present and prepares to begin their task. The party members' ranks are shown. 2 E ranks, 1 F rank Luke, 1 E rank and 1 D rank. The sub-leader explains that the main party defeats monsters and conquers dungeons. While they follow behind, the group admires the main party's direct combat, feeling it's impossible for low-rankers like themselves. The party mocks Luke's low rank and self-taught status, questioning what they can do with poor gear and rags. Luke looks troubled as they call him a dud. The leader asks if Luke will be okay, warning there's no guarantee of safety once inside the dungeon. Luke calmly acknowledges the danger, aware that a dungeon lies near his home and he's used to risking his life. A sneering party member warns him not to slow them down, but Luke remains determined, thinking that even if he's looked down on as a low-rank self-taught conqueror, the reward won't decrease. The group notes it's been 30 minutes since the main party left and decides it's time to head out. Inside the dungeon, the main party charges forward fiercely, swords drawn and shouting battle cries. They confront a fierce monster, the tension rising as they prepare for a brutal fight. The main party celebrates their victory over the monsters, though the leader and another member acknowledge the last foe was unexpectedly strong for a C rank. They debate whether to continue, knowing the next room holds the dungeon boss and sensing something strange about this dungeon. The sub-leader nervously questions the leader, who confidently insists they can't turn back now with the reward so close. The party rallies, assuring each other it will work out as it always has, while the sub-leader reluctantly accepts the push forward despite his doubts. The stake-pulling party stands before a massive, ominous door, hesitating but resolved to follow the leader's order. They begin pulling the stakes left in the dungeon rooms after defeating monsters, moving cautiously forward. Luke is scolded by his companions for not pulling the stakes properly, but he retorts that he doesn't want to hear criticism from those who are just playing around. Their task is to retrieve these stakes as artifacts for rewards once outside the dungeon. The group grows restless, complaining about the dullness of their task and suggesting Luke do all the work since a self-taught can't do much anyway. Suddenly, Luke senses something strange. A monster's voice and footsteps approaching from the front. Panic rises as they realize the main party should have cleared all monsters ahead by now. They find it odd that no monsters have appeared yet despite the time past, and worry about the strange situation unfolding before them. A monstrous wolf charges fiercely down the dungeon corridor, catching the low-rank stake-pulling party completely off guard. Panic erupts among them as they realize this is a C-rank dungeon, recommended only for conquerors of C rank or higher. The group is stunned, unable to believe they must fight such a threat at their level. The party scrambles in desperation, acknowledging the hopelessness of their situation. One shouts that this is an emergency, and the grim reality sinks in. There is no chance of winning against the approaching monster. The group breaks into a full retreat, the wolf relentlessly closing the distance. They scream for everyone to run, but the monster is catching up fast. One member, sweating and panicked, admits they have no choice but to sacrifice someone to survive. Amidst the chaos, the main character freezes, his expression tense and alert. The others' faces are shadowed with fear and determination as they prepare to face the dire situation, while he quietly processes the unfolding crisis. The harsh truth hits Luke. He's an F-rank self-taught conqueror. His teammates blame him for their dire situation. Saying he drew the short straw, one lashes out, punching Luke fiercely, insisting it was the party's decision and telling him not to take it personally. Luke is thrown to the ground, struggling to recover as a monstrous wolf approaches. He realizes escape is impossible as the wolf closes in relentlessly. Determined, Luke decides he has no choice but to fight. He calculates the wolf's attack timing, knowing it will aim at him midair after a brief charge. He prepares to strike at that precise moment, steadying his breath. Abandoned by his teammates and facing unpaid work, Luke refuses to die here. As the wolf lunges, he summons his magic, casting his first spell with a determined smile, Fireball. The monstrous wolf collapses from the impact of Luke's attack. He confirms his victory. Relieved that his minimal magic use prevented the dungeon from collapsing, calmly, he notes the strange savory smell lingering in the air. Luke hesitates, questioning whether he should retreat now, but the need for living expenses and the exam fee pushes him onward. Determined, he resolves to continue, gathering the abandoned dungeon stakes into his item box, satisfied that he's collected all he came for. Holding a self-tracking magical light, Luke endures teasing from his companions about using torches instead. He acknowledges the convenience of the light and the day's hardships, focusing on finishing the job quickly. Approaching a massive, ominous door, he struggles with its weight and notes the darkness beyond. Realizing this must be the dungeon boss room, Luke boldly casts a powerful fireball spell, shouting to announce his attack. The enormous door shatters explosively, revealing the path ahead. As the dust settles, he calmly acknowledges the door has opened, preparing for what lies beyond. The main party lies dead, their bodies strewn lifelessly across the ground. A massive, menacing wolf looms behind a calm young man, its fierce eyes glaring. The young man quietly wonders if he was the one who wiped them out, contemplating the devastating aftermath of his power. A massive wolf lunges forward with terrifying speed, its claws extended as the young man stands firm, startled. He questions if this is the dungeon boss, noting the main party was completely wiped out by this creature. A desperate voice urges to run away. The young man recalls the practical exam proctor's advice on facing powerful enemies. The correct answer is to run away. Despite this, he faces a C-rank dungeon boss, realizing escape is impossible because the wolf's single step outpaces his movement and it has endless stamina. The wolf strikes violently, injuring a tied-up man who warns that even 7 high-rankers couldn't last 5 minutes against this beast. The young man watches in shock as the wolf attacks relentlessly, confirming that a low-ranker like him stands no chance. Resolute, the young man decides to outmaneuver the wolf to win. He notices the wolf's punch is surprisingly slow, questioning if monsters can vary their attack speed. As the wolf charges, he casts a powerful fireball spell, shattering the ground and forcing the wolf to stay alert despite its rank. The dungeon boss wolf crashes through the collapsing ceiling, startling nearby wolves. The young man notes this beast wiped out 7 high-rankers and doubts the ceiling collapse alone will stop it. He reveals this was merely a distraction and prepares his true attack. The young man unleashes a powerful magic attack, shouting the spell's name as a massive blast erupts from his hand, aiming directly at the charging wolf. The blast surges forward, smashing through debris and forcing the wolf back. The young man clenches his fist, confident his attack succeeded, and wonders what to do next. The wolf retaliates with a blazing counterattack, charging fiercely through the ruins. The young man watches cautiously as the dust settles, sensing something unusual in the aftermath. The young man breathes heavily as he approaches the shattered remains of the dungeon boss, stunned to find it completely dead. He questions if this is truly the end. recalling how the steel-colored slimes that appeared daily outside his home were far tougher to defeat. Back in the town of Runark Union, he doubts a C-rank dungeon boss could be this weak, wondering if he struck a vital spot or simply got lucky. A man inside a building recounts how he was attacked by monsters but managed to escape, while others nearby seem to be a stake-pulling party. A woman expresses concern over the main party's failure to return, and the man who escaped worries about what happened to the young man named Luke, who risked his life to help them escape. Luke internally questions if they have forgotten he was used as bait. Suddenly, someone calls out his name in surprise. Luke faces a group of shocked people who exclaim in disbelief that he survived, insisting even the weakest monsters in that dungeon should be strong. Luke calmly points out his feet are still attached, while others laugh and mock the idea that he defeated the dungeon boss that wiped out the main party after killing a stray monster. A man and a woman dismiss his feat as a joke, asking if being left alone drove him crazy. A woman doubts that an F-rank self-taught could defeat a C-rank dungeon boss on their first request, calling it impossible and asking if he is an idiot. Luke challenges their disbelief by producing the dungeon stake he retrieved from the boss room as proof. The group reacts with shock and confusion, unable to believe such a large item could come from an item box. One man insists it must be fake and rushes to check it, while others express astonishment at seeing the dungeon stake for the first time. The woman confirms the stake is real, causing a stir among the group. A man angrily confronts Luke, slapping him and telling him he should have said how amazing he was from the start. Luke narrowly dodges a second elbow strike, which was the group's unanimous decision. Aaron asks what all the commotion is about. Two serious men enter the scene. Harrigan, the Union Chief, and Roa, the Vice-Union Chief. Harrigan acknowledges the situation with a stern expression. While Roa looks on silently, the room quiets as they take in the unfolding events. The stern man questions how a self-taught F-rank could have defeated the boss that wiped out a C-rank party alone. Expressing disbelief, he suggests it's more likely a trap was set to kill the main party after weakening the boss, like poison or unstable terrain, and demands the truth. The man accuses the self-taught man of having a devious mind but insists he can't fool them. The accused explains there's no benefit in killing strangers, and he only accepted the request to retrieve the dungeon stake. He adds that defeating the boss alone wouldn't increase his reward. The man asks if the story about being attacked by stray monsters and being the only survivor is also a lie. The accused nervously responds. The woman with the ribbon states Luke failed the Conqueror School exam recently and doubts he could trap high-rank conquerors even if caught off guard. She calls him a weakling, and he admits it's understandable to be suspicious but pleads for a chance to prove himself, fearing he'll be labeled a murderer. The stern man shouts for silence, calling him self-taught scum and declaring they never believed his story. He orders him to stay at the Union facility to prevent escape while they discuss the matter among the upper echelons. The scene shifts to the accused sitting alone in a room, resigned that he won't know what happens to him until tomorrow. At the Union upper echelon meeting, a man scoffs that no matter how many times he hears it, he can't believe the story. Another points out the party was wiped out in a C-rank dungeon, calling it an act of revenge against elite conquerors by a lowly self-taught individual. A stern voice declares execution is unanimous. A smirking figure brings up the Conqueror School, mentioning an interesting story. Doubts arise about what a self-taught who failed the exam could possibly achieve. The smirking man reveals someone scored perfectly on the practical exam but still failed. Others react with shock and suspicion, demanding to know who he is and how long he's been there. The man from the Royal Capital Dungeon Conquering Association appears, questioning if such a perfect scorer truly exists. He suggests a self-taught conqueror would be top class and capable of easily conquering a C-rank dungeon. The man warns that if such a person exists, they'd become an enemy of the strongest, threatening to blow the Union away instantly. Voices erupt in protest, demanding proof and warning him to watch his mouth. He calmly states he has already spoken with the Conqueror School and that the truth will come out tomorrow. The elder man calls him a foolish man spreading baseless rumors but acknowledges the situation. The final thought declares that tomorrow, the self-taught's evil scheme will be exposed. Meanwhile, the accused yawns, complaining about constant surveillance despite saving on lodging. A woman calls for an emergency meeting, ordering him to come out. He wonders what the emergency could be about as he prepares to enter. The young man is struck by the overwhelming presence of the room and those seated at the long table, exclaiming how imposing it all is. The atmosphere feels like a condemnation chamber without room for argument, and he contemplates using force to escape. As he begins to summon magic carefully, a voice commands him to stop, warning that such actions will only complicate matters. The young man recognizes the voice and is startled as the practical exam proctor appears, greeting him with a confident smile and declaring he has come to clear the young man's name, offering a glimmer of hope amid the tense self-taught inquisition. Luke explains he accepted a job to remove dungeon stakes but was surprised by monster appearances and abandoned by his party. He had no choice but to collect the stakes and defeat the boss alone. Accusations fly that he trapped and killed the main party after they weakened the boss. But Luke reflects bitterly on how little trust there is in self-taught F-rank conquerors, despite his efforts. The scene shifts to a tense chamber where Union Chief Harrigan and others glare at Luke. The narration states an inquisition full of enemies begins, and Luke's fate will be decided. The Conqueror School practical exam Proctor Suero appears, watching with a confident smile. Harrigan demands if Luke intends to change his statement, but Luke firmly insists he has only told the truth. Just as he said yesterday, Harrigan sneers at Luke's stubbornness, pressing him for repentance. He threatens immediate imprisonment if Luke lies and summons a witness to Luke's exam. He challenges Luke, questioning if a lowly self-taught conqueror could defeat a dungeon boss that wiped out a C-rank party alone. Harrigan demands the examiner expose the truth, urging them to hurry and reveal the facts. Harrigan steps forward confidently, admitting he doesn't know everything about Luke's abilities but can testify to his extraordinary power. He wouldn't be surprised if Luke defeated a powerful dungeon boss alone. The room erupts in shocked murmurs and disbelief at this claim. He continues, revealing that Luke obliterated all 5 targets in the Conqueror School's practical exam. The targets were made from a composite of orichalcum and mithril. Boasting the world's highest durability, Luke's expression darkens, confused by their focus on the targets rather than him. The crowd questions if Luke is truly the real deal, struggling to believe the facts. A man warns others to watch their words or face charges as an accomplice. Harrigan points out that Luke failed only because he couldn't use status magic, vouching for his strength. Others acknowledge that if a former B-rank conqueror supports this, it must be true. Luke is stunned to learn the practical exam proctor was a former B-rank conqueror. Harrigan cheerfully claims he came to clear Luke's name. Luke thanks him quietly. The room reacts in awe, calling Luke's strength unbelievable and an incredible achievement. A man warns others not to be fooled, but shock ripples through the crowd. The Union Chief suddenly unleashes a powerful swirling magic attack. His expression fierce and determined. People shout in alarm, demanding to know what he's doing as the destructive force spirals through the building. The Union Chief mocks Suero, a former B-rank conqueror, questioning if his judgment has deteriorated after years away from the field. Others plead for the Union Chief to calm down, warning that using an A-rank magic at full power could destroy the entire Union building. The Union Chief angrily silences them, demanding Suero prove his strength by withstanding the attack. The Union Chief launches the massive magical assault, calling Suero an inferior self-taught scum. Suero reacts quickly, preparing a smaller fireball while suppressing its power to avoid causing injuries. The destructive magic tears through the room, scattering chairs and debris as Suero braces for impact. The smaller fireball flies toward the larger swirling attack, colliding with it in a burst of energy. The Union Chief sneers, mocking the small fireball and declaring Suero weak, his confidence wavering as the clash unfolds. The massive magical attack shatters the room, sending chairs and debris flying as the destructive force tears through the building. Shock and fear ripple through the onlookers, their faces wide with panic. The smaller fireball collides with the larger attack, neutralizing it instantly. Observers in disbelief, amazed that such a small fireball could counter such overwhelming power. Suero stands firm, his expression calm and resolute. Suero warns not to speak ill of the practical exam proctor despite the overwhelming display of power. The Union Chief, injured and shocked, is tended to by others. A composed figure apologizes for earlier rudeness and offers a special reward for the main party. He holds the hush money, acknowledging it could cover his expenses easily but refuses it, insisting the money be used for memorial services for the fallen. He understands the pain of losing family and asks that no one speak of the day's events, accepting the situation with quiet resolve. A man with glasses smirks, acknowledging Luke's impressive abilities. He admits it was worth witnessing Luke's power up close, confirming that Luke's skills are genuine and he admires him even more now. The scarred man thanks Luke for defending him earlier, expressing amazement at how Luke challenged the Union Chief's powerful magic with such a small fireball. Luke modestly replies he only did what was right. They discuss the upcoming exam, with the man noting Luke's skill likely leaves nothing more to learn at school. Luke hesitates but confirms the next exam is in half a year. Luke reflects on the incident, realizing it was caused by being self-taught. He acknowledges the low credibility of self-taught conquerors and resolves to enter and graduate from the Conqueror School. The man waves goodbye, promising to wait at the next exam. Luke vows to pass next time but worries his money will run out in about 10 days, deciding to focus on working as a self-taught conqueror until then. The next day at Runark Union, Luke is shocked to learn there are no requests available for self-taught F-rank conquerors through the Union. Aaron explains that self-taught conquerors cannot join a guild to accept requests, unlike Conqueror School graduates who have high trust and many requests. A diagram illustrates the difference in trust and request volume between guild members and non-guild self-taught conquerors. Luke sighs, frustrated that he can only accept requests issued through the union. He tells Aaron he'll come back tomorrow and to let him know if any requests come up. Noticing a new notice board, he spots an incredible request offering 1,000,000 gold for an E-rank dungeon conquest with no rank or experience restrictions. His eyes sparkle with excitement as he rushes over to inquire about it. He wonders aloud why such a generous request hasn't been taken. Aaron explains with a smile that people are usually suspicious of high-reward requests issued without going through the union. She clarifies that discovered dungeons are managed by the union, which issues requests to various guilds or individual conquerors, but recently they've struggled to manage everything. He listens as Aaron explains that sometimes residents who want quick conquests issue requests without the union. She describes dungeons as places where magical power concentrates and produces monsters. Naturally occurring dungeons start small, but if left alone or if conquest attempts fail repeatedly, they grow. In the worst cases, they become uninhabitable areas. Luke reflects somberly that his home was destroyed by a dungeon, understanding the demand for quick conquest. Aaron continues, saying sponsors can freely decide request conditions, which vary, but tend to be more lenient than union-issued ones. She points out that the suspicious-looking request Luke found is from the union, but it lacks a minimum guarantee, which is unusual. Despite her concerns about introducing such requests, Luke eagerly grabs the form, insisting he'll take it. At the east gate of the town of Runork, Luke notices a gathering and wonders if it's the main party assembling. A woman calls out to him, introducing herself as Alan, the leader, warmly greeting Luke with a bright smile. Alan enthusiastically presents the new members joining today and mentions the stake-pulling party is also present. She announces their departure for Renan Village, where an E-rank dungeon awaits. Luke sits with Alan, who cheerfully hums and asks if it's true he went on a rampage in a C-rank dungeon. Luke is taken aback, questioning how they know. Rumors swirl around town about Luke's supposed feat. Despite being a self-taught F-rank, he allegedly tore apart and threw the C-rank dungeon boss multiple times. Luke denies these stories while townsfolk speculate wildly. Some say he defeated it with fire magic, others claim he used just his breath, or even transformed into a demon and scorched the area. Luke reflects that people must be sarcastically mocking the idea that a self-taught F-rank could accomplish such a feat. He then challenges, asking what if he said it was true. The group laughs off the rumors, with Alan gleefully declaring how interesting it would be if they were true. Others agree it was just a lie, and the older man calls it a weird rumor. Luke smiles quietly, noting the recent tense situations in town, while the group enjoys the rare lighthearted moment. A lively group plans a celebration party after conquering the dungeon, eager to spend all the reward money despite one voice warning that it defeats the purpose of working. The wagon wheels creak as they arrive, and the driver announces their arrival at Renan Village, telling everyone to disembark. The party approaches Renan Village, noticing its sparse population and abandoned houses. Luke wonders if this is truly an E-rank dungeon. Feeling uneasy, a warning is given to the stake-pulling party to wait at the entrance due to danger. They spot the large dungeon entrance nearby. At the dungeon entrance, Alan and Luke observe how much the dungeon has expanded, with loud monster noises echoing. Luke senses a strange presence in the air and realizes this won't be an easy E-rank job. The group prepares to move forward cautiously, staying alert as they enter the suspicious dungeon. Inside the E-rank dungeon in Renan Village, the group cautiously advances through the rocky cavern. Suddenly, 7 colored lizard monsters rush toward them. Alan shouts for everyone to attack as the party prepares to engage the incoming threat. The monsters are swiftly defeated, their bodies falling to the ground. The party members express relief and confidence, noting that the monsters are definitely E-rank despite the suspicious request details. One member cheerfully declares this dungeon will be easy to clear. Alan turns to Luke, sparkling with curiosity, and asks how he learned magic. Luke notices the group's keen interest in his story about defeating the C-rank dungeon boss. He begins explaining that he first learned magic from his father, but was initially only able to barely defeat weak monsters one-on-one. 5 years ago, after his conqueror parents disappeared, he trained relentlessly, studying magic books and practicing real combat until he grew strong enough to defeat normal monsters. Despite asking many people, he has found no clues about his parents' whereabouts. Alan reacts with shock upon hearing that his parents disappeared. He continues, explaining that he lived alone for 5 years as a child in a remote mountain house, where he gathered and cooked his own food. Money was extremely precious since he wasn't earning, and he carefully counted every coin. When asked about money, he admits it was a constant struggle. The group listens attentively, some unsure, as Luke reveals the hardships he endured during those years. Luke explains that all he had was the 100,000 gold his parents left him. saving it until he needed 50,000 gold for the exam fee. Two men comment on how tough his life must have been and how much he's endured for someone so young. Alan encourages Luke to share any worries, promising to listen. She then declares they are comrades who entrust their lives to each other, even if they just met, and urges everyone to get along from now on. He reflects silently on the word comrades. But a sudden uneasy feeling washes over him. The group arrives at a large, ominous door, and Alan remarks on how smoothly they made it this far. She warns that from here on, it's the boss room, even if it's only an E-rank, and tells everyone not to let their guard down. The group prepares to enter the boss room. Luke urges everyone to move forward as the door opens. Suddenly, a massive lizard-like monster appears. Towering over the group, Alan rallies everyone, shouting that it's time to defeat the giant lizard. The battle begins with the group coordinating their attack. Alan orders to first cut off the lizard's tail, then blind its eyes. Luke summons a swirling magical attack, confirming it should be enough. Alan notes the monster's movements have slowed and pleads with Luke to act quickly as the fight intensifies. Luke unleashes a powerful flame burst, engulfing the dungeon boss in flames and defeating it in a single hit. The group reacts in shock and awe at Luke's incredible magic strength. Rumors swirl about him having defeated a C-rank dungeon boss alone. Luke calmly picks up the dungeon stake from the boss room, planning to hand it over to the stake-pulling party on the way back. The dungeon proves surprisingly easy, and Luke reflects that he might have been worrying too much. The group prepares to leave, with Alan suggesting they invite the stake-pulling party to celebrate. Suddenly, a loud scream echoes, catching Luke's attention and making him uneasy. Alan senses something is wrong with the stake-pulling party and urges everyone to hurry back. The group rushes toward the dungeon entrance, only to find the area in chaos. Luke's expression turns to shock as he surveys the scene. The stake-pulling party has been wiped out, and Luke shouts in alarm. A member of the party is gruesomely impaled by a projectile, blood spraying violently. Luke demands to know what happened as he approaches the fallen bodies, horror and urgency gripping him. A projectile pierces a helmeted soldier, blood splattering violently. The group struggles to locate the source of the attack, suspecting bandits. The rocky terrain offers perfect hiding spots, allowing enemies to strike from blind angles with thrown weapons. One man dodges narrowly but admits he could only manage if it were just him. A woman volunteers to scout the opposite side, urging the others to stay put. The group hesitates, frozen by fear despite orders to stay hidden. The leader yells for them to hide quickly, warning that standing still means certain death. Suddenly, an explosion erupts, violently striking several soldiers who scream in agony. A woman gasps in shock as the carnage unfolds. Amid the chaos, a wounded woman cries out for everyone's attention, her body pierced by a projectile. The leader screams Alan's name in desperation. Alan struggles to crawl forward, bloodied and weakened, while the others lie motionless nearby. Alan, barely conscious, reaches out and pleads for Luke's help through tears. A flashback of a smiling woman declaring their bond as comrades flickers in his mind. Determined, he steels himself, shouting the names of Alan and the others, resolved to save them all. His eyes narrowing, he summons rings of energy that fly toward two bandits, landing a swift strike. He knocks them down with precise force. The bandits cry out in pain as he prepares for his next move. The two bandits struggle, tied up and furious. One snarls insults while the other demands release. The man holding them tight demands answers, questioning their motives for attacking. One bandit reluctantly admits they are bandits who lure parties into the dungeon to ambush them. The man realizes the request he accepted was a trap set by these bandits. Suddenly, a heavy weapon swings toward him. Another figure appears, commanding attention with a fierce shout. The bandits cheer, confident their boss has arrived to finish the fight. The newcomer mocks the man for dodging so well, while the bandits prepare to end the battle. The man with the monstrous, shifting face mocks his enemies, revealing he is no longer human but a shape-shifting monster who absorbed their former leader. The bandits scream in terror as he declares himself the new leader, taunting them for not realizing the truth. The young man recalls his father's warning about intelligent, speaking monsters being troublesome. The monster explains the two bandits might have been after money, but he craves blood and flesh, licking a captured woman with a sinister grin. The young man stands amid fallen bodies, the monster teasing him about his anger. The monster insists the young man is angry and warns him not to pretend otherwise. Suddenly, the monster vanishes, leaving the bandits panicked and shouting in confusion. The young man explains he can blend into his surroundings, making it impossible to dodge attacks from an unknown source. The young man calls out to his captives, telling them where he is as he prepares to strike. The bandits scream in terror, convinced they are about to die. the monster taunts them, demanding to know what they will do as the young man launches his attack. The monster's eyes widen as it notices something unexpected. The young man stands firm, preparing a massive magic spell that swirls ominously above the battlefield. The monster growls in confusion, questioning the huge magic spell forming before them. The young man declares that if the enemy can't see, an attack with no escape is no problem, as the swirling vortex of magic grows larger and more threatening. The young man channels his power, casting a massive flame burst with intricate magical circles glowing behind him. The fiery blast surges forward with overwhelming force, tearing through the rocky terrain and forcing the bandits to flee in terror. The destructive wave races across the battlefield, leaving devastation in its wake. The aftermath reveals scorched earth and smoke rising from the ruins. Two bandits stare in shock and fear, unable to believe the destruction. The young man calmly states his relief that the dungeon could withstand the attack and declares the battle over. He grips a rope, announcing he will take the two captives with him now. The scene shifts to the town of Runork and the Union Building, where officials discuss recent events. The Union chief appears subdued, reflecting on the ambush and wipeout confessed by the bandits. A young man notes the chief's somber mood, attributing it to the recent incident. The officials acknowledge that much has happened this time, hinting at the turmoil caused by the bandits and the young man's decisive victory. An older man grimly notes the two-party wipeouts in a short time, each with only one survivor. The young man insists he didn't do anything, but the older man presses on. The young man calmly admits it feels like he's a reaper, acknowledging the grim pattern. The young man reflects on the frustration and the fact that 17 people have died around him in just 4 days. He decides to return to the inn he's borrowing to get some sleep. Suddenly, a man calls out to him, asking for a moment to talk. The man introduces himself as a scout from the Royal Capital Dungeon Conquering Association. The scout explains the association is a huge guild that only accepts elites who excelled at the Conqueror School. He offers the young man an invitation to join their guild. The young man, a self-taught conqueror, is shocked and contemplates the offer to join the prestigious Royal Capital Dungeon Conquering Association. A confident man reveals his desire to invite Luke to join their guild. Luke, a self-taught conqueror, is taken aback by the offer from the prestigious Royal Capital Dungeon Conquering Association. The man introduces himself as Silua with a playful smile. The narration explains that the Royal Capital Dungeon Conquering Association is an elite guild accepting only those with excellent grades from the Conqueror School. Luke wonders why such a powerful guild would approach a self-taught conqueror like him. Silua guesses Luke is questioning the offer and confirms it. He asks if Luke plans to enter the Conqueror School, and Luke admits he does. Silua then invites him to join the guild after graduation. He reflects on the guild's simple name, which belies its immense power. The importance of finishing school is emphasized by the guild's insistence on recruiting only graduates. Silua assures Luke that since the guild is so persistent, they will definitely recruit him. A smiling man extends an invitation to Luke, saying their guild would be a good fit for him. He promises to introduce Luke to valuable opportunities and surround him with strong conquerors for motivation. Luke finds this a strange offer but admits it's exactly what he wishes for. Luke questions the benefit of scouting him while he's still self-taught with no real achievements. The man points out Luke has single-handedly overcome situations that wiped out two parties. Luke recalls being called the Reaper when he left the Union while others fear him. The man asks Luke if he's aware of this nickname and looks at him intently. The man calls Luke a savior and explains the guild wants to increase its influence by borrowing Luke's power. Luke is surprised by how highly they value him. Luke wonders if it will be okay to join despite being called the Reaper. The man assures him that such rumors will eventually disappear, calling them unfortunate coincidences. Luke hesitates, but the man remains silent, his expression darkening with determination. A stern figure warns that a conqueror's life is extremely fragile. Memories flash of brutal battles where many lie wounded or dead, their bodies broken and bloodied. The young man stands solemn, haunted by the carnage around him. The weight of this truth is heavy, especially coming from a member of the Royal Capital Dungeon Conquering Association, a group deeply involved in life or death struggles, despite being called the Reaper. The young man insists he holds no official title and tries to dismiss the worry. Puzzled, he asks about the meaning of a title. The older man explains that a title is attached to one's status and can be checked if one has mastered status magic. The young man admits he can only use a strange magic that shows numbers, which caused him to fail the Conqueror School exam. The older man emphasizes the importance of properly using status magic to understand one's abilities. The explanation continues. Titles grant constant buffs or debuffs, affecting ability values. A buff raises abilities, while a debuff lowers them. The young man's status screen reveals his stats and the title Bandit Exterminator attached to him, illustrating the concept clearly. He wonders if titles can have either a buff or debuff effect, recalling seeing the title section in status magic before but not last time he checked. He notices the title Bandit Exterminator attached to him and asks if that's what is meant. The man confirms but admits he's never heard of that title before. The young man recalls the bandit boss who was an idiot and easy to use. The man explains titles usually only affect about 5%, suggesting it might make him stronger against bandits. The man tells him this knowledge is common for Conqueror school graduates and that he'll take his leave for the day. Then, with a sly smile, he hints that he actually wants to test the young man's skills. Suddenly, the man lunges forward with a sword, praising the young man's good reaction speed. The young man is startled, but the man says sparring is more fun than just watching. He promises to spar with him to report his abilities in detail to colleagues at the Royal Capital Dungeon Conquering Association. The young man thinks sparring is fine but warns it's dangerous in the middle of town. The man cheerfully suggests they play tag while heading to the outskirts, as just walking there isn't interesting. The young man is caught off guard and starts running. Realizing this is bad because the man isn't the type to listen, townsfolk notice the commotion and wonder if the young man, Luke, is being chased. A man and a woman suspect Luke has done something wrong again, but the man clenches his fist, determined to believe in Luke and help him this time. Suddenly, a shout urges Luke to run, startling him as he recognizes the stake-pulling party from his first job rushing toward him. The man throws a wooden stake at Luke, who braces himself. A shocked bystander recognizes the face of the approaching man as Silua from the Royal Capital Dungeon Conquering Association. The stake misses Luke as he dodges, and a relieved man rushes to check on him, thankful he is safe. Luke apologizes for the interruption, but the group assures him it's fine. They move to a secluded area where one demands Luke show his full power magic. Luke refuses, explaining he never uses full power magic against humans. The man, smiling darkly, asks if Luke is serious, gripping his sword tightly. The man challenges Luke, a member of the Royal Capital Dungeon Conquering Association, to try stopping him without using full power magic. He launches a swift attack with his Godspeed sword, praising Luke's speed, but questioning how long he can maintain it as the fight intensifies. Luke questions if he should keep dodging. Realizing that avoiding attacks without counterattacking won't end the fight, he decides maybe he doesn't need to avoid the attack at all. Silua is shocked as Luke suddenly stops moving, not dodging the incoming sword strike. He catches the sword with his bare hands, confirming Silua's suspicion. He smirks confidently, acknowledging his own skill. He reveals the sword doesn't actually cut. It's a fake sword. He punches it with a fireball-coated fist, surprising Silua. The fireball impact shatters the sword, leaving Silua stunned. Silua explains he never intended to hurt Luke and that the sword is wooden. He praises Luke for seeing through the trick. Luke recalls how Silua deflected an earlier attack with the sword without cutting the signboard. Silua smiles quietly, amused by the situation. Silua explains that while strength is important, calm observation is a crucial skill in a life-risking profession. He reveals that his real test for Luke was to evaluate his calm observational skills by using a fake sword. Luke realizes this was part of the skill test. Silua praises Luke's excellence in this aspect and confirms he already knew Luke's magic was strong. With a cheerful farewell, Silua offers to answer any questions about the Royal Capital Dungeon Conquering Association before leaving. Luke, exhausted, sits down and wonders if he's injured. He decides to check his status and notices a new symbol with a plus sign. Curious, he taps it and discovers a new effect called Bandit Exterminator, granting plus 100% damage against bandits. Shocked, he realizes this is a significant boost. He contemplates the new title's effect, noting it allows him to check the effect by tapping it. He wonders if this means his attack power doubles against bandits. Remembering Silua's words that title effects usually only add about 5%. Luke questions if this title is special or if Silua was wrong. He decides to investigate further, sitting thoughtfully while holding his status card. After parting ways with Silua, Luke examines his status display, noting his abnormal default status. He taps the plus sign to reveal the title's effect, discovering a 100% damage boost against bandits, far beyond the usual 5%. Puzzled, he wonders if the title is special or if Silua was mistaken. Deciding to investigate further, he sits thoughtfully, contemplating the anomaly. Luke visits a cheap inn in Runark Town and buys a Conqueror School exam prep book at a bookstore. Despite his efforts, he finds no information explaining the 100% correction value or the plus notation he was curious about. Reflecting on Silua's words that title effects are usually around 5%, Luke questions the meaning of the 100% correction value. Realizing it implies double power, he notices his status numbers have increased slightly. Deciding to put the status issue aside, he resolves to focus on earning money as a self-taught conqueror, with the next exam still half a year away. The next morning at the Runark Union, Luke faces rejection from the receptionist, Aaron, who apologizes that no requests are available for solo F-rank self-taught conquerors. Though he expected few good requests, He is surprised that none are available at all, despite arriving early in the day. Erin admits she hasn't heard of anyone who can manage solo as a self-taught conqueror, acknowledging how tough it must be for everyone in that position. She points out a notice posted nearby, inviting Luke to take a look. Luke's eyes widen in shock as he reads the notice calling for self-taught guild members wanted. She explains that there is a guild gathering self-taught conquerors and recruiting members, promising more work than going solo. Luke processes this, realizing even self-taught conquerors can join a guild nearby. Two men mock the self-taught guild, calling it a gathering of those who failed conqueror school. Luke notes the guild's poor reputation. A diagram shows aspiring conquerors choosing conqueror school first, with failures ending up in the self-taught guild. Luke reflects that the self-taught path is looked down upon more than he expected. A man tears down the recruitment notice repeatedly, while a woman angrily warns him not to do it again. Luke apologizes, caught in the middle of the tension. The woman snaps, furious that people mock the self-taught guild despite their efforts. She urges Luke to try the exam starting that afternoon. Noting there is no cost to take it, Luke's eyes widen with determination as he considers the challenge ahead, while a vast crowd gathers in the mountains near the labyrinth, ready for the exam. Luke surveys a large crowd of self-taught guild applicants, noting there are far more than he expected. The group is a motley mix of hopefuls, many clearly struggling or without work, stirring a sense of kinship in him. He contrasts these applicants with conqueror school passers, represented by the radiant and illustrious Fasner, whose sparkling aura and confident demeanor set them apart. Luke spots Fasner and feels the difference in atmosphere immediately. As he looks around, he nervously asks where the reception is. A young woman holding a stuffed cat approaches, immediately recognizing Luke as a newcomer and teasing him for being lost. She introduces herself as Leon, a veteran guide for this exam, and offers to help despite Luke's confusion over the lack of a reception desk. Leon points toward a stern, masked older man and tells Luke to ask him for details. The man steps forward, introducing himself as Roddy, the examiner for the self-taught guild. Luke greets him respectfully, ready to be guided through the exam. Roddy eyes Luke sharply, accusing him of looking like he's about to run away from the exam. Luke insists he wants to take the exam and asks how to register. Roddy scoffs, saying their guild has no registration system, explaining it's too crowded to keep track now. Luke questions if it's really okay to have no roster with so many people. He explains that especially now, those who failed the Conqueror School exam gather here as a fallback. He grumbles about being used as a backup despite people still failing the exam. Luke nervously denies that they are slackers, apologizing. Roddy shrugs it off, saying that's just the truth. He warns not to underestimate the self-taught guild, emphasizing the exam is incredibly hard. He stresses that being a conqueror is a life-or-death job, and that it doesn't matter if one is from Conqueror School or the self-taught guild. One must just wait until the time comes. Luke reacts with surprise as Alan points out Roddy's mean look and foul mouth. Alan angrily declares that Roddy keeps failing her every time, vowing to pass and prove herself. Luke asks if the exam is really that difficult, and Alan warns he'll regret underestimating it. Alan declares she won't give up because among all professions, being a conqueror is the best, not just for money. She usually makes ends meet elsewhere but vows to keep challenging the self-taught guild entrance exam as many times as it takes. Luke ponders this, realizing there are various circumstances, while Alan glances back at Roddy, who watches silently. Luke reflects on his anxiety after failing the Conqueror School exam, noting Aaron at reception didn't seem to know the exam details. Alan encourages him, confident his strength will carry him through. A large crowd gathers, about 150 people, for the exam. He notices familiar faces from the Conqueror School exam among the crowd. Two hopeful examinees complain that even passing the self-taught guild exam isn't impressive. Roddy, the examiner, understands why he's been complaining and announces the exam will begin. Roddy points to the dungeon entrance and commands the examinees to conquer the dungeon in front of them. Ending his announcement, the crowd reacts with shock and surprise at the daunting challenge ahead. The crowd erupts in panic as the examiners abruptly end their explanation, revealing the challenge. Suddenly conquering a relatively new dungeon, one examinee shouts in terror, fearing death, while another mocks them as elite weaklings who failed the Conqueror School exam. The tension escalates until a sharp voice cuts through, telling them to shut up and reminding them they are part of this group too. The atmosphere descends into chaos as examinees shout insults and dare each other to fight, each terrified of entering the dungeon first. Amidst the uproar, a heavy foot stomps down, silencing the crowd instantly. Roddy, the masked examiner, steps forward with fierce intensity, demanding to know if they truly aim to be conquerors. He harshly tells those afraid of dying to go home and sleep, his words striking fear and awe into the crowd. The mass of applicants reacts with shock and unease as Roddy's presence dominates the scene. The crowd begins to disperse, many giving up and heading home, while others hesitate, overwhelmed by the brutal reality. Luke watches thoughtfully as more than half of the 150 applicants leave without even entering the dungeon, stunned by the sheer scale of the dropout. Despite many applicants dropping out, a large group remains, deep in discussion about strategies to conquer the dungeon. The young man contemplates joining them but hesitates. Doubting the dungeon's difficulty since he defeated a wolf before, likely a weaker boss, he considers entering alone. Reasoning that the exam only requires conquering the dungeon, with no rules against solo attempts or mandatory cooperation, confident, he steps into the dungeon, determined to succeed. Roddy notices the young man entering first, surprised since most would avoid going first. He wonders if the youth is foolish or confident. Noting that most fear being first, nearby, Alan watches with interest, curious to see what he can do, while the young man senses he might be under observation as he proceeds deeper into the dungeon. Near the dungeon entrance, Luke moves forward steadily while other applicants hesitate. He believes the dungeon shouldn't be too dangerous and watches carefully for anything concerning. Feeling Leon's intense gaze, he tries to ignore it as Alan excitedly watches from behind. Roddy observes them from a distance as they enter the dungeon. Roddy contemplates Luke's boldness, guessing he might run away soon like most applicants or misjudge his strength and get into trouble. Deciding to follow and help if needed, Roddy stays alert. As Luke advances, others begin to feel safer and start entering the dungeon behind him. He remains focused, determined to keep going without worry. Nearby, two applicants mockingly agree to use Luke as a test subject to proceed safely. Suddenly, a large object falls, startling everyone. Pumpkin monsters drop from above, causing chaos and panic among the applicants. They shout to run away as the monsters attack, forcing everyone to scramble for safety amid the sudden threat. A determined applicant refuses to lose to the pumpkin monsters and launches a fireball at them. Others watch confidently, boasting about their strength, but giant pumpkin monsters suddenly appear, causing panic and cries for help. The applicant calmly decides to clear the pumpkins away, knowing they will respawn soon. The focused newcomer casts a powerful magical barrier, surprising the pumpkin monsters as they approach. The monsters react with shock, caught off guard by the sudden defense. The newcomer unleashes a sweeping magical attack that annihilates the pumpkin monsters instantly, leaving the onlookers in disbelief. The smell of burning pumpkin fills the air, and the newcomer notices it with a curious expression. The newcomer reflects on the savory aroma of the monster pumpkins, oddly tempted despite knowing they shouldn't be hungry from monster corpses. Roddy watches from a distance, puzzled by the newcomer's actions. Alan nervously wonders if the newcomer is running out of magic while continuing to effortlessly annihilate the pumpkins. Alan watches silently, puzzled by the newcomer's fearless advance without hesitation. The newcomer moves steadily forward as explosions erupt around him. Observers discuss letting him continue defeating monsters to progress. Confident the exam will be easy, Roddy appears behind them, stating he is watching to ensure the monsters are properly defeated. Roddy declares they won't pass anyone who avoids facing opponents they can beat, calling such people deadweight. Nearby, struggling applicants panic as their sword breaks and magic runs out. Unable to land attacks on moving monsters, one cries out in despair, overwhelmed and ready to give up. Suddenly, the panicked group flees in terror, shouting to run away. The newcomer looks confused by their retreat. Roddy notes that everyone seems to have dropped out already and insists those struggling at the dungeon entrance must start over from the basics. The newcomer, Roddy, and Alan stand before a massive pile of burning pumpkin monsters. Roddy praises the newcomer's ability to handle such a large group alone and asks if he intends to continue. The newcomer confirms this is the plan, ready to face what lies ahead. Roddy promises to watch the newcomer until the very end, causing the newcomer to tense up and wonder about Roddy's intense gaze. The newcomer feels their stares are unsettling and questions if they doubt his ability to conquer the challenge. Alan looks on silently, clearly affected by the tension. Alan wonders why the newcomer can advance without hesitation, recalling how her own magic falters since an injury. She believes her magic power is low but sufficient to defeat monsters of this level. Suddenly, a monster lunges at her, forcing her to react in panic. She admits that despite training, her body freezes in real combat, and she calls out to Leon in alarm. The newcomer steps forward to help Alan, surprising Roddy. Roddy explains that with Leon's original magic, he could defeat 5 monsters at once but warns that Leon once challenged a foe beyond his limits and was severely injured. Alan continues fighting fiercely, while Roddy and the newcomer watch closely. Alan reflects that Leon's trauma makes him hesitate even against monsters he could defeat, fearing severe injury if the monster is stronger than expected. She worries this could cost him his life. Roddy insists they must not interfere, emphasizing it's for Leon's own good. The newcomer silently agrees, determined to support Leon from the sidelines. She realizes that defeating the monster herself won't help Leon, whose body is tense and unable to control his magic. She urges him to relax and use his magic, shouting his name in desperation. He insists she saw his magic earlier and that he can defeat the monster. He proposes they cast their magic simultaneously to take it down together, assuring her that with his unstable magic alone it would be difficult, but combined with hers, the monsters would be instantly killed. They agree to strike on the count of 3. They count down together, their eyes locked in determination as the monster charges toward them. Their combined magic strikes the monster, instantly defeating it. She joyfully exclaims their victory, calling him newcomer. Roddy praises the newcomer's magic as strong and instant, while Leon reacts awkwardly to the praise, finding it creepy. He reveals he never actually cast any magic, only pretending and making it appear slow. The newcomer reacts in shock, but he reassures her he would have saved her if anything happened. Roddy explains that the impressive magic was truly Leon's own effort, and that until now, Leon had been wasting energy by forcing himself too much. The newcomer processes this revelation quietly. She tearfully acknowledges she defeated the monster with her own power, her hands steady for the first time since her trauma. Memories of the battle flash as she reflects on how the newcomer's magic gave her the confidence to cast without tension. The monster is destroyed again, and she calms herself, feeling safe now. She gratefully thanks the newcomer for easing her anxiety and unlocking her power. He modestly denies doing much, crediting Leon's own efforts. Roddy observes that these two show promise, surprised that the entrance exam isn't filled with unmotivated people after all. The self-taught guild entrance exam's dungeon conquest is underway in its mid to late stages. With only 2 candidates left to pass or fail, Roddy watches silently, noting the newcomer's potential despite doubts about his skill to defeat large groups of monsters from the start. The newcomer calmly casts magic, facing the monster without hesitation, surprising Roddy. Suddenly, the monsters begin fleeing in panic, leaving Roddy shocked. The newcomer remains composed, unaffected and expressionless, calmly stating there are still more monsters ahead. The newcomer denies being broken, while Roddy struggles to understand the newcomer's overwhelming strength. Roddy calls out, warning the newcomer to be cautious, but the newcomer walks forward confidently. Unguarded, Roddy and the small girl hurry to catch up, both panting heavily as they approach a massive door. The newcomer announces they've reached the boss room. Roddy nervously asks if the newcomer plans to fight the dungeon boss alone, but the newcomer questions if that is the plan. Turning to face the examiners, Roddy panics as the door creaks open, realizing the gravity of the situation. A terrifying presence fills the air, shaking the small group with fear. The girl trembles, sensing something on a completely different level. Roddy urges them to escape immediately, but the massive door slams shut, trapping them inside. Panic rises as the ominous presence closes in, swirling dark energy creeping toward them. A colossal figure with a pumpkin head emerges from the shadows, its menacing form towering over the group. The air crackles with dark magic as the pumpkin-headed monster advances, casting a chilling shadow over the trio. The young man shouts a warning, commanding everyone to hide behind him. Roddy stands ready, his imposing figure shielding the others as the pumpkin-headed monster prepares to unleash its attack. The girl gasps, caught between fear and hope. The monster launches a barrage of spells, raining destruction down on the group. Roddy orders the others to stay back and promises to defeat the threat. He grips his weapon tightly, bracing for the onslaught as explosions erupt around them. Roddy struggles to hold the line, realizing they are being pushed back despite his efforts to protect Leon. He wishes the relentless attack would stop, but the pressure mounts. Leon, determined, asks if he just needs to stop the attack, prompting Roddy to urge him to hurry behind him. Leon unleashes a powerful spell, Flame Burst, sending a massive wave of fire toward the pumpkin-headed monster and its minions. The blast surges forward with overwhelming force. The pumpkin-headed monster is struck by the fiery assault, its form recoiling as Roddy and the girl watch in shock. Nearby, a group of onlookers express regret and disbelief, doubting their chances of conquering the dungeon. The crowd reacts to a tremendous sound emanating from the dungeon, startled by the sudden explosion that sends debris flying and shakes the ground violently. A massive hole gouges the ground, stunning everyone nearby. Shocked, they question if the newcomer caused this destruction. The power behind it is overwhelming, surpassing even seasoned conquerors' abilities. Roddy clutches his chest, sweat dripping, overwhelmed by the display. Roddy's expression shifts to intrigue, calling the newcomer an interesting guy. Dust clouds obscure vision, and the girl anxiously asks if the newcomer is alive and if Roddy is all right. They both strain to see through the haze. The dust settles, revealing the newcomer standing firm, declaring he defeated the boss. He calmly asks if this means he passes the test, confident yet composed. Roddy and the girl react with shock and confusion, unable to comprehend the newcomer's feat. The newcomer questions if he made a mistake, worried about failing and the consequences for his livelihood. Roddy is stunned, struggling to believe the newcomer actually conquered the dungeon. Questioning if that was the test, he admits the explanation given was just a front, as even low-ranked dungeons are nearly impossible for newcomers to clear alone. The newcomer looks confused as Roddy warns him to run away from the monsters. He reveals the exam was designed to test situation awareness and crisis management skills. The newcomer wonders if that alone determines pass or fail. Roddy confirms Leon passes the exam, surprising the girl beside him. The girl reacts with shock and joy at the news of passing. Roddy praises Leon for overcoming past mistakes and trauma, carefully defeating enemies while assessing his own abilities. He officially declares Leon's situation awareness and crisis management skills have passed. The girl excitedly congratulates Leon, celebrating their success together. Roddy asks about Leon's thoughts on the result, prompting a flustered reaction. Roddy then embraces Leon warmly, showing affection and pride, while Leon is caught off guard but not resisting. He is told he passes the exam despite it deviating from its original intent, because such exceptional talent cannot be overlooked. Relief floods him as he realizes passing means he won't struggle with requests or living expenses. A girl cheers him on excitedly, celebrating his success. Roddy embraces him tightly, overwhelmed with joy that someone with such talent has joined their guild. Though he protests the pain of the hug, the girl watches, wondering if Roddy is always this emotional. Roddy quickly recovers, saying he must report about Leon and the newcomer to their comrades. He then asks the newcomer's name, and the newcomer replies it's Luke, admitting he forgot to mention it. His expression shifts to shock as he repeats Luke's name with disbelief. Luke asks why Roddy is surprised. Roddy stares wide-eyed, connecting the name to a rumor. Luke's face mirrors the shock as he realizes the rumor of the Reaper has reached even here. Roddy pauses, addressing Luke with a serious tone, acknowledging the rumor that he is the feared Reaper. He admits Luke passed but asks for more time, confessing his intense desire to keep Luke from being sent away. The girl beside Luke tries to calm Roddy down. Sensing his overwhelming eagerness, Luke remains composed. Questioning if there's a problem with the rumor, Roddy's eyes narrow, revealing his determination to keep Luke close. He explains the guild's foundation on trust and image, emphasizing the need for greater sensitivity since they gather self-taught individuals. The guild members behind Roddy appear lively and diverse. Leon, observing, wonders if the rumor about Luke being the Reaper is truly a problem, while the girl expresses frustration over the fuss, wishing Luke could pass without complications. Roddy insists on persuading the higher-ups and asks for one day to resolve the matter. Luke silently agrees, accepting the situation despite his reservations. He reflects that complaining or acceptance won't build trust. Realizing this is his chance to grasp something important. The scene shifts to a quiet landscape as he decides to wait for the results the next day. The next morning dawns over the town of Runork. Luke walks through the bustling marketplace, visibly tired and hungry. He gazes at the shining fresh bread and roasted meats, his stomach growling as he contemplates eating after the long ordeal. Luke clutches a small bag of boiled beans, reflecting on how he hasn't eaten since yesterday morning and needs to eat despite having little money. Suddenly, a woman shouts that he's a thief, sparking a chase as townsfolk yell to catch him. The thief taunts his pursuers, mocking their slow pace as they scramble to catch him. Luke, exhausted and irritated by hunger, watches silently, his frustration growing. Luke swiftly throws the bag of stolen goods, causing the thief to stumble and fall. The thief curses Luke for his actions, but Luke calmly retrieves the bag, unfazed. He confronts the thief, declaring he will catch him despite his hunger. The thief recognizes Luke's distinctive red eyes and patterned clothes, whispering that he might be Luke the Reaper. The crowd murmurs in shock, questioning if the feared Reaper is truly here. Rumors about Luke have spread here as well. People whisper that those around him die. He resigns himself to catching the thief for now. The thief panics, screaming for Luke to stop and not come near him. The thief is finally caught, and a grateful young woman thanks Luke warmly. The thief's father steps forward, promising to handle the punishment. An older man recognizes Luke as the wanted F-rank self-taught conqueror and orders the thief to be brought along. Luke reflects silently, recalling the receptionist's words about self-taught conquerors. Despite some having first-class skills, many suffer from inferiority complexes or poverty, causing the group to be viewed negatively. He contemplates the weight of his reputation. A young woman approaches Luke shyly, offering him muffins as a thank you for his help. Surprised, he hesitates but listens as she insists he accept the gift with gratitude. A woman gently tells Luke not to be discouraged by the rumors calling him the Reaper, insisting that to her, he is a good person who helped her. Luke, holding muffins she gave him, is touched and thanks her sincerely as she waves goodbye. Luke walks away clutching the warm muffins, feeling both his hunger and heart being filled. He resolves that now he should be able to walk to the self-taught guild's base. The scene shifts to the outskirts of Runork, where Luke approaches a large, imposing building. He looks up in awe, realizing this is the place. Standing before the dilapidated yet grand structure, Luke recognizes it as the self-taught guild's base. Despite its worn appearance, it exudes a different atmosphere from other guilds, reminiscent of the Royal Capital Dungeon Conquering Association base he had seen in books. A woman inside notices Luke's arrival and curiously says, question mark. A woman excitedly calls out to Leon, correcting herself to say it's Luke who has arrived. Luke admits he's nervous as the woman confirms he's here to hear the results. Suddenly, a violent fight erupts as a man aggressively grabs another by the collar, breaking through the wall. While Luke and the woman watch in shock, the woman says she'll call Roddy. Luke and the woman stand before a large hole in the guild wall, witnessing the aftermath of the fight. The man with the mask warns the other to back off, demanding Luke immediately. The aggressor snarls that the guild isn't the others to command and insists they obey the higher-ups. They argue fiercely about the bad timing and the risk of another guild kidnapping Luke. The masked man and the aggressor tense up as the masked man notices Luke's arrival, greeting him sharply. The aggressor prepares to strike but stops. The scene shifts inside the self-taught guild, showing a lavish room with 3 figures silhouetted by a window. Luke sits on a couch facing 2 men, one masked and one unmasked, in a tense atmosphere. Stark, an executive of the self-taught guild, apologizes for making Luke come all this way and addresses the test results. He solemnly says he is sorry, causing Luke to fear he failed. Stark then clarifies that Luke passed, but the guild wants to postpone his joining for now, leaving Luke stunned and anxious. Luke asks if the rumors about him being called the Reaper are true, and the masked man confirms it. He insists such rumors will be dispelled once Luke joins them, but another man doubts a weak F-rank self-taught conqueror could defeat a boss alone. They suspect Luke must have set a trap, despite Luke's ability to defeat a boss without casualties. They worry the news won't spread correctly. One man angrily questions who would trust a guild where everyone involved dies, grabbing the masked man by the collar. They realize that if trust decreases, the number of requests will drop, and the union, wary of rumors, would stop giving them work. Luke wonders how they can dispel rumors without any work. The scene shifts to a lavish room where the masked man and another sit, while a man stands by the window. The standing man explains the self-taught guild was formed by gathering self-taught conquerors. He notes the guild used to be small and full of hardships but is now large with stable work. He adds he has a responsibility to protect the guild, which feels like family, and he can't let its members end up on the streets. The man turns to Luke, pleading for understanding and begging him. Luke listens quietly as the man explains that although the guild still wants him, now is a bad time to join. Luke recalls the rumors about him, with people whispering that those around him die and mentioning Luke the Reaper. He contemplates that if he joined now, it might worsen the situation. Luke asks if the problem will disappear once the Reaper rumors die down. The man confirms this, apologizing that the rumors have become a convenient excuse. Luke acknowledges the burden Stark carries, and the man promises the self-taught guild will provide as much backup as possible in return. He explains he wants to join a guild because he's struggling to get requests and asks if there's any way to receive them. The man admits it's a difficult problem, explaining the guild's existence. He advises Luke to try hard to find requests even as an unaffiliated self-taught conqueror, but offers hope that with Luke's abilities, there might be a way. Luke insists he'll take any method. Roddy nervously protests. Roddy reveals a last resort method, accepting entire dungeon requests. Luke is surprised by this and listens as Roddy explains that by accepting requests individually, Luke can set conditions freely. Instead of participating in recruitments, Luke would become the requesting side like a guild. Roddy tells him to ask the receptionist for details. He warns that gathering people is difficult even if conditions can be freely decided, but Luke understands and thanks him. He considers the idea interesting and realizes he needs to earn living expenses somehow. Determined, Luke decides to head to the Union immediately to pursue this option. Luke arrives at the Runork Union building, relieved to have finally made it. He heads straight for the reception, but a woman with long flowing hair and a pickaxe immediately recognizes him, exclaiming that he must be Luke. The woman introduces herself as Alyssa, responsible for dungeon investigation and management. She angrily confronts Luke about destroying the dungeon with magic, warning him that the rubble has made passage difficult and the area dangerous due to potential collapses. Luke apologizes and acknowledges he must be more careful not to overdo it in the future. Alyssa suddenly lashes out, calling Luke unforgivable and swinging her weapon at him. Luke dodges as she causes a commotion. drawing the attention of others who plead for calm and ask them to stop causing a disturbance in the Union. Despite the chaos, Luke tries to calm the situation, but Alyssa continues her aggressive scolding, leaving Luke overwhelmed. Luke reflects on his visit to the Union, realizing his method of destroying dungeons is dangerous and has drawn Alyssa's watchful eye. She warns him sternly, promising to keep a close watch next time. Despite his curiosity about her, he decides to ask the receptionist about accepting an entire dungeon request. At the reception, Luke asks about dungeon requests. The receptionist explains that while most think only guilds can accept them, individuals can too. She notes it's easier for guilds due to fees and personnel, which is why most avoid individual acceptance. She begins to explain which dungeons are currently available for commission. Luke studies several commission papers for C, D, and E-rank dungeons. The receptionist explains that good requests are quickly taken by major guilds. Leaving fewer options, Luke inquires about the guarantee fee. Learning that contractors must deposit 100,000 gold with the Union. If they fail, the fee is lost. If successful, it's returned. The receptionist doubts an individual could manage the money and personnel needed, but Luke insists he'll take an E-rank dungeon alone. She reacts in shock, saying he's the first to claim he'll conquer a dungeon solo since she started working there. She adds that the Union doesn't dictate conquest methods, only that the dungeon is conquered regardless of how or by how many. He insists he'll manage the dungeon solo and asks how to handle the paperwork. The receptionist nervously agrees. He sets off toward the village tied to the E-rank dungeon request, training by carrying heavy luggage. 2 days of camping have passed, and the journey is long. He reflects that distant requests are often ignored by major guilds, which might be why he got this one despite his inexperience. As dawn breaks, Alyssa wakes him, announcing their destination, Marcel Village, is just ahead. Suddenly, Alyssa surprises him with a playful attack, explaining she followed him by carriage after hearing he accepted a dungeon request. She clarifies she's not joining as a conqueror but will handle investigation and management, concerned about his reckless dungeon clearing methods. He admits he'll watch from the sidelines, still essentially conquering alone. She stresses she came to ensure his safety this time. Alyssa warns about the dangers of destroying fragile dungeon areas, which can cause collapses blocking the return path. She recalls how he wrecked the dungeon entrance during the self-taught guild's exam and struggled to get back after defeating the boss. She commands him to listen up. A true conqueror ensures safety and survival until the very end. She explains that dungeons usually require a party, so guilds handle the requests, but with Luke's strength, there's hope. He recalls conquering simple dungeons alone before and knows the 100,000 gold guarantee fee is painful but refundable upon success. As an F-rank self-taught conqueror, gathering people is unlikely, so conquering solo would increase his share. She advises him to survive until the end, reminding him that when facing strong enemies, there are times he can't afford to think about that. He resolves to fight more carefully from now on, knowing various dungeons likely await. The scene shifts to the peaceful Marcel Village. Arriving at Marcel Village, he notes its small population. Suddenly, a cheerful girl named Maruru approaches, offering a snack made at her mother's shop. She excitedly asks if he's a traveler and insists on giving him something nice. He gratefully accepts the snack, calling her big sister as she hands it over. Maruru waves goodbye with a bright smile, wishing him to enjoy his time in the village. Alyssa blushes, impressed by the child's kindness, and suggests visiting the child's mother's shop later. He savors the snack, thinking what a nice kid she is. An elderly man and a woman notice the newcomer and comment on his unfamiliar face. He explains he came to conquer the dungeon in their village and asks for a map. The man trembles, overwhelmed, whispering that a guild has finally come to their village. But the newcomer insists he is not from a guild. The villagers quickly spread the news that a conqueror has arrived, causing a stir. The villagers express deep gratitude, thanking him for accepting their humble request. The atmosphere grows festive as the crowd cheers around him. Alyssa notes the lively mood, while the man who spoke earlier asks where the newcomer's companions are. The newcomer clarifies he is not a conqueror but here for investigation and management. The villagers express disbelief, insisting surely he couldn't have come alone. He firmly states he came alone to conquer the dungeon, not with a guild, shocking everyone. The crowd reacts with disbelief and panic, shouting that no one can conquer a dungeon alone. The villagers cover their faces in despair, declaring the village doomed as the newcomer and Alyssa stand among them. The villagers urge him to go home, warning there's no need to waste his life. He insists he'll conquer the dungeon properly alone. They dismiss him, telling him to accept their feelings. He pleads, reminding them he's defeated bosses solo before and can handle an E-rank dungeon alone. As he calls out to them, they turn away, leaving him behind with Alyssa. He laments being rejected by the villagers, while Alyssa accepts the situation and says she must prove her ability by conquering the dungeon herself. Suddenly, the ground shakes violently. Alarmed, They rush toward the source of the tremors, realizing something is terribly wrong. The dungeon has expanded and collapsed, putting the village in danger. A woman screams that Maruru was swallowed by the dungeon in the collapse. Villagers call for help, and the man vows to save her, declaring the dungeon conquest difficulty has increased. Maruru appears, recognized as a new face and the child they know, as he prepares to act swiftly. The dungeon has expanded, swallowing the girl Maruru, leaving a dangerous chasm. Villagers lament the disaster but admit they cannot search for her inside the problematic dungeon. The newcomer resolves to enter alone, despite warnings of danger, determined to find Maruru while conquering the dungeon. Alyssa appears, telling him to leave Maruru under her watch so he can fight at full strength. He questions why she followed him, but she assures him she's used to dungeons and will flee if needed. He decides to trust her words as a manager's and she warns him to be very careful. Inside the dungeon, darkness envelopes them completely. Both struggle to see, realizing even light magic is ineffective here. The oppressive blackness unsettles them as they proceed cautiously. Alyssa voices concern over the dungeon's danger and doubts the F-rank self-taught conqueror can handle it alone. He accepts the risk and instructs to keep their left hand on the wall to avoid getting lost. As he moves ahead, she calls out, alarmed not to be left behind. Alyssa panics, asking how Stark can move forward in such darkness. He calmly explains that even without sight, one can sense air movements and sounds, advising to always keep the left hand on the wall. Stark reflects on his long experience living alone with dungeons, realizing this method is unexpectedly useful now. Suddenly, a monstrous creature approaches, and Stark quietly warns, "Here they come." She panics at the sight of monsters and insists they run, claiming fighting in total darkness is impossible. Stark confidently casts a fireball spell, lighting the way ahead. Alyssa looks confused but follows him as the fireball moves forward, burning away the darkness. She questions how Stark knows the monster's location so precisely. He explains that hearing their voices allows him to generally pinpoint their positions. Impressing her with his skill, Stark wonders about Maruru, noting they haven't heard her footsteps, concluding she must be further ahead. Meanwhile, Maruru wanders alone in the pitch-black dungeon, unable to find the exit despite walking for a long time. She calls out for her parents, overwhelmed by fear but determined to find the exit while hiding. The oppressive darkness surrounds her as she presses on cautiously. Stark and Alyssa advance cautiously through the darkness. Alyssa notices a red light and a rugged body. Suspecting a golem, she warns that such monsters don't appear in E-rank dungeons and wonders if the dungeon has expanded. The massive golem looms closer, its single eye glaring ominously. Alyssa urges Stark to be careful, explaining that golems are tough and magic is ineffective against them. Stark calmly casts a spell, striking the golem's eye, which glows brightly before the creature collapses. Alyssa is surprised, questioning the sudden defeat. Stark explains the eye was just a vulnerable target. She is shocked that Stark has been defeating monsters alone with one hit, something that usually requires a party of 5 to 7. Stark quietly stores the dungeon stakes in his item box. Alyssa asks Luke to shine light behind him, revealing a child-sized handprint where the dirt has been wiped away. Stark resolves to do his best despite the challenge. They observe that the handprints appear only in a few places but seem to continue deeper inside, concluding Maruru must be ahead. They decide to move forward. Meanwhile, Maruru, small and unnoticed by monsters, reflects on how conquerors fight such terrifying creatures. After a dangerous encounter, she catches her breath, sensing something nearby. Maruru stands before a massive ornate door, wondering what it could be. She notices a small hole in the gap of the door and, excited, decides she might be able to escape through it, crawling toward the opening. Outside, Stark and Alyssa arrive at the large door, noting the brightness beyond it. Alyssa points out the gap at the bottom, suggesting Maruru could be inside. Stark's expression darkens as he realizes the gap is just big enough for a child to fit through. Stark resolves to enter alone, telling Alyssa to wait for Maruru outside. She protests, but he insists, feeling he would only be a burden. His determination hardens as he vows not to let the dungeon expand further and to save the village. He steps forward into the door's opening. He faces a towering, menacing golem emerging from the darkness, its massive hands reaching out toward him. The creature's eye gleams ominously as it prepares to attack. Stark acknowledges the boss's overwhelming strength as the ground shatters beneath him. He narrowly dodges a massive stone fist, catching a chunk of rock midair and hurling it back. The impact leaves a deep crater, showcasing the boss's destructive power. He notes the boss's surprising speed despite its enormous size. He swiftly evades a barrage of falling debris, but the boss counters with a devastating beam attack that catches him off guard. He leaps to avoid the incoming attack, Shouting in alarm, nearby, Alyssa and Maruru react with shock to the sudden noise. The massive ornate door behind them trembles violently, signaling the intensity of the battle inside. Maruru, relieved to see Alyssa safe, explains she tried to escape through what she thought was the exit but got stuck. She warns of a terrifying monster lurking inside. Alyssa comforts her, assuring that Stark will defeat the fearsome creature for them. Maruru stammers in disbelief, questioning the identity of the figure. A confident woman winks and declares herself the strongest self-taught conqueror magician. The silhouette of a cloaked figure stands amid swirling dust, while a monstrous golem with a sinister grin prepares to move. Stark steadies himself, noting he narrowly avoided an attack thanks to the room's pillars and decorations. He spots the golem, realizing it cannot move immediately after casting a powerful magic spell. He plans to strike the opening after the golem's next magic attack, acknowledging its high defense. His eyes sharpen as the golem's single eye glows ominously. The golem launches a devastating attack, smashing the pillars and debris toward Stark. He braces himself, determined to dodge the incoming assault. The golem begins preparing another magic attack, and Stark concentrates, gathering his magic power into 2 massive fireballs. He chants the spell name, Flame Bursts, as the fiery spheres swirl above him, ready to unleash their destructive force. Stark calculates that the amount of magic he's gathering should be enough to break through the boss golem's iron defense. He knows the moment the golem starts moving will be crucial, observing carefully. He notes the golem pulls back its right arm and steps forward with its left foot. Stark predicts the golem will attack with its right arm, aiming precisely like this. The golem begins circling to its back, trying to avoid Stark's anticipated attack direction. Stark combines his 2 fireballs, preparing to unleash a double flame burst. He aims to deliver a powerful strike that should at least reach the golem's core. Stark releases the double flame burst with full force, sending a massive fiery explosion crashing toward the golem. The intense flames engulf the target in a fierce blaze. The golem roars as the fiery assault hits, debris and dust flying everywhere. It reacts violently, its single glowing eye glaring fiercely as it prepares to retaliate. The fiery explosion crashes into the golem, shattering stone and debris everywhere as the impact hits the core. Yet, the core shows no sign of damage, leaving the attacker puzzled by the lack of any trace. He shrugs off the confusion, feeling lucky the strike was critical, and pulls the massive dungeon stake from the boss room to store it safely in his item box. Determined to report the results, he clenches his fist, realizing the dungeon must have grown stronger and increased in rank since before. He sets off to find Maruru, knowing this request was tougher than the previous C-rank wolf. As he approaches, Maruru rushes to him with relief and joy, embracing him tightly and thanking him for being safe after defeating the boss. Maruru beams with gratitude, calling him big brother and expressing how glad she is that everyone is safe. The reunion grows lively as others join in, sharing relief and happiness. With the mission complete, they prepare to return to the surface together, their conquest and rescue finally accomplished. Stark commands everyone to look at the massive pile of dungeon stakes he has gathered. Shocking the crowd, he explains that these stakes must be turned in to the Union to receive rewards, so keeping them is pointless. The crowd reacts with disbelief and awe, realizing the stakes are undeniable proof of the dungeon's conquest. The stunned crowd exclaims in shock at the sheer quantity of dungeon stakes, confirming the dungeon was truly conquered. Some struggle to believe it, while Stark and an older man hear a strange sound approaching. Alyssa tearfully explains the sound is the dungeon collapsing. As once the stakes are removed, the dungeon gradually disappears. The devastated dungeon site is shown crumbling away. Alyssa praises Luke for defeating all the monsters and the boss alone, while the group watches the dungeon vanish in amazement. The crowd continues to marvel at Luke's unprecedented feat of defeating the boss so quickly and alone. They question if he is some kind of monster due to his incredible power. The older men sigh with relief, declaring the ordeal finally over so they can sleep peacefully. The crowd erupts in cheers, praising Luke as an incredible solo conqueror. A title none had heard before. Overwhelmed, Luke repeats the term silently, trying to grasp its meaning. The villagers invite everyone to celebrate with home-cooked food and drinks. Their joy infectious, Luke smiles warmly, touched by their happiness despite the ruined homes and fields nearby, realizing the hardship they've endured. Luke senses a sudden change in his status and wonders if the sound he heard signaled this. A notification confirms a new title has been added, Solo Dungeon Conqueror. The title grants a 50% boost to magic power during solo dungeon conquests. Luke is stunned by the power of this effect, but a voice calls him back to the celebration, reminding him to join the festivities. A woman cheerfully urges Luke to hurry as she waves him over with a smile, while a girl carries a tray of snacks. The narrator senses this will make him even more inclined to pursue solo conquests. Luke waves back to villagers calling him. Responding that he's coming, the next day, Luke prepares to leave, carrying a heavy load on his back. He tells the woman he must investigate other dungeons, and she reminds him he needs to report his achievement to the Union. They exchange farewells. Acknowledging it's time to say goodbye, Luke agrees quietly. The group reflects on their safe return, relieved there was no collapse blocking their path this time. Unlike before, Luke admits he fought more carefully. The woman smiles warmly, saying things look fine now, their hands clasp firmly, sealing their bond. Luke and the woman shake hands, exchanging encouraging words. She tells him to do his best despite the tough road ahead. He thanks her sincerely, promising to try his best as well. As Luke walks away with his heavy luggage, the woman watches him go, feeling a bit lonely despite their brief time together. She recalls telling Maruru that Luke is the strongest self-taught conqueror magician. She's never seen anyone like him. He defeated all monsters in one hit and remained calm even after defeating the boss unscathed. 3 days later at the Runork Union, a hopeful thought lingers. Luke might truly become the strongest magician. Luke arrives back at the Union, greeted warmly by a young woman who notices he returned far sooner than expected. She questions if conquering alone was too difficult, but Luke smiles, noting even the receptionist doubted his solo success. He stands before a massive pile of dungeon stakes, explaining this is what's needed in times like these. The woman panics at the sheer amount of stakes, but Luke calmly says he will measure them now. He explains dungeon stakes serve as proof to the Union and can be sold as valuable energy sources, though usually the main party doesn't get them since they cover the costs of the stake-pulling party. Luke adds that since he did everything alone, the stakes are a valuable income source for him. The woman, astonished by the quantity, confirms these are genuine dungeon stakes and notes the dungeon must have grown significantly while unattended. She contemplates how the total purchase amount depends on the measurement results, and that the number of stakes varies with the dungeon size. The woman hesitates, questioning if the dungeon stakes truly came from this request, doubting their origin. The man calmly explains that while it's possible to buy stakes elsewhere at a higher price, it's unrealistic. He challenges her doubt, suggesting she ask the villagers. She admits the stakes' quality differs from expectations, apologizing nervously. He asks if the quality was poor, but she insists it was quite the opposite. She insists the stakes are too good to come from an E-rank dungeon, making it puzzling since it's unlikely he bought higher-rank stakes at a premium. The man notes the dungeon had grown far beyond the original request's description, and the monsters felt stronger than E-rank, wondering if that's the cause. The woman points out it hasn't even been a year since the request was issued, so such rapid growth is irregular. The man reflects that his house also turned into a dungeon. Feeling the growth was as fast or faster, he trusts a Union staff member's knowledge that this must be true. He then proposes donating part of the dungeon stake reward to Marcel Village, surprising the woman. The woman, touched, recalls how the village was left in ruins after monster attacks. She thanks him warmly, calling him kind and promising to arrange the donation. She remains amazed, insisting his ability isn't F-rank. She acknowledges his solo conquest of such a difficult dungeon with deep respect. He admits dungeons can't normally be conquered solo and acknowledges stronger conquerors exist. He wants to raise his rank quickly to the next stage. Knowing income depends on work, she hesitates but confirms there's a way to rank up fast, though the conditions are severe. She urgently wants to help him and reveals a nearly impossible method to rank up quickly. Asking if he wants to hear it, despite the difficulty, she insists it's the only backdoor for ranking up. He extends his hand confidently, asking if she's ready as the chapter title appears, signaling a pivotal moment. The group celebrates safely returning from the dungeon entrance, relieved and joyful. Suddenly, a strange sound catches their attention, leaving them puzzled and alert. The crowd erupts in joyful surprise as they spot Maruru returning safely. Elders and villagers call out her name with relief and excitement. Rushing to greet her, Maruru runs toward her mother, tears of happiness streaming as they embrace tightly. The crowd expresses heartfelt thanks, celebrating her safe return with cheers and smiles. An elder praises Maruru's survival, noting how impossible it is to conquer a dungeon alone. When asked if she stayed near the entrance, the elder is shocked by the revelation that she conquered the entire dungeon solo. Maruru calmly confirms her feat, assuring everyone the dungeon is fully conquered so they can rest easy. The elder laughs nervously, still processing the news. Skepticism spreads through the crowd as some accuse Maruru of lying, insisting no one could conquer that dungeon alone so quickly. Maruru's sister passionately defends their brother's accomplishment, vouching for the truth. The dungeon manager also guarantees the claim, but the villagers remain doubtful, exchanging uneasy glances and murmurs. Maruru stands quietly, realizing the crowd refuses to believe her. A chance arrives for Luke as he wonders if there really is a way to rank up quickly. He anxiously asks what he should do next. She asks if he knows about the 5 great guilds, and he admits he does. She explains that among countless guilds, 5 employ especially large numbers of conquerors. Everyone aiming to become conquerors knows about them. The Royal Capital Dungeon Conquering Association, which invited her after graduation, is one of these 5 great guilds. Self-taught conquerors need 1 year of practical experience to raise their rank by 1. But with a recommendation from a guild master of one of the 5 great guilds, a special exam allows moving from F rank to E rank. Luke is surprised. Asking if such a thing exists, she says it's rare for a guild master to recommend a self-taught conqueror, and that she hasn't heard of it happening in the last 10 years. Luke realizes it's essentially unusable. He doubts the realism of such a path, and she agrees, saying serious ambition requires connections. By the time those connections are made, one would likely rank up anyway. The hurdle of knowing a guildmaster who could make such a request is too high, so it can't be helped. Luke decides to search for work the old-fashioned way by checking the request board. Suddenly, he is called by name and turns to see Silua smiling confidently. Shocked, Luke recognizes him as a member of the Royal Capital Dungeon Conquering Association and exclaims his name in surprise. He demands to know why Silua is here. Silua cheerfully explains he sensed Luke might need help and came to assist. Luke is stunned, hearts fluttering at the unexpected support. Silua offers Luke a document, asking if he needs it, and Luke nervously questions what it is. Silua smiles and says he thought Luke might eventually need it. He is shocked to realize the document is a guildmaster's letter of recommendation for the special exam. Silua confirms it's exactly what Luke had been talking about and admits he pushed the guildmaster to write it some time ago. He offers to take it back if Luke doesn't want it, but asks what Luke wants to do. Luke gratefully accepts, promising to use it. Silua, pleased, says he expected that and prepares to leave. He watches Silua leave, pondering if he really came just to give him the letter. He acknowledges Silua must be quite skilled to have persuaded a guildmaster. Luke then turns to Maruru, who is shocked and exclaims loudly as Luke presents the recommendation letter, asking if she can take the exam with it. She's stunned that a recommendation letter was prepared immediately after their conversation. He asks if he should write his status on the form, wondering why it's necessary. She explains the actual rank-up exam is later, but they need to check his status now to decide who will oversee the exam based on ability. He understands the importance of selecting the examiner carefully. He begins filling out the form but suddenly realizes he can't see the status. She confirms the status he wrote is blacked out and unreadable when examined by the Union's machine. She explains that the rank should normally be shown in alphabetical letters, but this is the first time they've seen such a strange status. Despite the Union chief's investigation, the cause remains unknown. An older man suggests entrusting Luke to a diagnostician in town who can determine a person's condition and rank by touching their body. They discuss the diagnostician's ability to judge rank by examining magical energy flow and strength. Questioning if it's a skill or title, they've requested the diagnostician to come to the Union immediately. Meanwhile, people react with surprise as a woman walks through the hall, drawing attention. The door opens, revealing a tall, elegant woman. The young man wonders if she is the diagnostician, while the girl beside him is struck by her beauty. The woman introduces herself as Mia, the diagnostician, and warmly says she looks forward to working with them today. Mia leads them into a grand library-like room. Towering over the others, she greets them again, and her eyes widen as she sees the unreadable status. She admits this is her first time encountering such a status and says there's nothing they can do with it. Mia asks Luke to remove his jacket to begin examining his magical energy. Luke is surprised but complies. She explains she senses magical strength as temperature. Cold if the rank is low, lukewarm if average, by touching the person. Mia continues, saying high-ranked individuals feel hot, but from a distance she can't determine detailed status. The more contact she has, the easier it is to feel the temperature. She demonstrates with a child, noting strength as B rank and intelligence as C rank. Luke offers his jacket, asking if it's okay, and Mia agrees as she reaches out to touch him. Shock floods her face as she gasps, overwhelmed by the intense heat radiating from the magical energy. The sensation feels like her consciousness is being swallowed whole. She struggles to comprehend this powerful force, wondering who this child could be. Luke asks if she can discern anything from the magical energy, but she admits she cannot. She apologizes, explaining this is her first time encountering such a strong magical presence, and asks for a moment to compose herself. The woman struggles, feeling dizzy and overwhelmed by the high magical energy. Unable to examine it properly, she suddenly lifts Luke into her arms, insisting they move to a place with a bed so she can investigate further. Maruru reacts with surprise and embarrassment at the sudden action. In a quiet room, she sits beside Luke on a bed, focusing intently. She explains that by examining his whole body in close contact, she hopes to understand his detailed status. She notes the powerful, beautiful flow of magical energy, something she has never felt before, as her hand moves to his stomach area to continue the examination. She recalls feeling dizzy even when examining an S-rank conqueror, but Luke's magical energy is beyond that, too strong to understand, as if her senses are malfunctioning from the intense heat. She wonders if the bug-like status is also due to this overwhelming magical energy and realizes she must examine Luke more closely. Leaning in, she moves closer to him, causing his surprise. She urges herself to calm down and make a judgment, inching even closer to Luke, her hands gently touching his face. The tension rises as she moves closer still, their faces nearly touching, leaving Luke shocked. She finally embraces Luke tightly, enveloped in a radiant magical aura. Maruru watches in shock and cries out in protest, overwhelmed by the intimate moment. Mia blushes and sways unsteadily, overwhelmed by the heat and contact. Maruru scolds her for touching too much, but Mia collapses, prompting urgent calls for help. In the aftermath, Luke reflects that Mia collapsed from the heat and was unable to measure his status, which remains unknown. After much discussion, someone is finally found to oversee the exam. 3 days after applying for the rank-up exam, the scene shifts to the town of Runork at the Union examination venue, where a large circular arena is surrounded by trees and a gathering crowd. More spectators continue to gather, and Luke is surprised by the elaborate setup. Suddenly, a bright light catches his attention, and he recognizes Fasner approaching. Fasner greets Luke warmly, and a small girl excitedly calls out to him. Fasner explains he came to watch Luke's exam since the Conqueror School is closed today. Luke is surprised to see Suero among the spectators as well. Fasner punches Luke lightly, telling him to listen up. Suero encourages Luke to do his best but warns him not to overdo it. Luke thanks them both sincerely. He acknowledges Luke as a man he respects, urging him not to do anything disgraceful. Suero echoes his support, and Luke smiles gratefully. The crowd cheers them on, wishing Luke good luck as he prepares to face the exam ahead. As everyone watched, whispers spread through the crowd about the rank-up exams candidate. One man asks if others have heard about the F-rank self-taught conqueror named Luke. Another dismisses him as a bottom feeder who can't do anything, doubting he will pass. They mention the rumor that he is the feared reaper, but still expect his failure. The crowd stirs with anticipation as the exam is about to start. A man smiles calmly, announcing the beginning of the rank-up exam for the self-taught conqueror. Luke steps forward into the arena, determined, while murmurs hint that a big disappointment is coming. The first rank-up exam in 10 years begins, and the content is revealed to be a mock battle. Luke steps forward, tense, as he realizes his opponent is an F-rank self-taught conqueror. A confident man with a tattooed neck smirks, sizing Luke up. The man boasts about facing such a weakling, revealing himself as Leo, a Royal Capital Dungeon Conquering Association instructor. He introduces himself as the examiner in charge and promises to take good care of Luke. Luke responds calmly, introducing himself, and Leo grins widely. The crowd reacts with surprise and excitement as the two prepare to face off. Observers note the strong arms and great sword wielded by Leo, recognizing the pattern on his face. The crowd murmurs about Leo, known as the Demon of the Royal Capital, who rigorously trains the best graduates from the Conqueror School. Toying with them effortlessly, spectators cheer, anticipating an incredible mock battle, while two men comment that Leo looks strong, though not as strong as one of them. His strength radiates even from afar, a testament to his status as an instructor from a massive guild. The crowd urges Leo to take down the bottom-tier self-taught conqueror. Rallying behind him with cheers, a woman anxiously fidgets, hoping Luke will be all right. Recognized as Mia the diagnostician, Leo acknowledges the growing crowd with a confident smile. Leo, determined to make a strong impression, charges forward with a fierce fist aimed at Luke. Luke calmly acknowledges Leo as the instructor and asks if defeating him means he passes the exam. Leo reacts with surprise at the question. He bursts into laughter, confirming that if Luke can beat him in a fight, no one would object to him passing. He boasts about being an instructor from the Royal Capital Dungeon Conquering Association and challenges Luke's resolve. Luke reflects that Leo's overconfidence works to his advantage, as Leo doesn't believe Luke is seriously trying to win. The two face each other in the arena. Ready to begin, a woman commands the start of the rank-up mock exam, and Luke declares he's ready to go anytime. Leo lunges forward with a fierce magic-infused spear aimed directly at Luke. Luke braces himself, eyes sharp and focused. As the attack rushes toward him, the impact is imminent. Luke catches the spear just in time, halting its deadly momentum. The force nearly surprises Leo, who realizes how close the strike came. Leo laughs, admitting he must have unconsciously held back against an F-rank opponent. He thought he was giving his all to impress Mia but vows the next time will be different. He summons a powerful magic spell, boasting it has felled countless fierce warriors in one hit. Luke calmly forms a hand seal, channeling his magic to counter the incoming spell. Leo acknowledges his own lack of practice and admits playtime is over. The crowd urges the instructor to stop holding back and go all out, signaling the fight is about to escalate. Leo launches a fierce attack, shouting to try this move, as he swings his magic-infused spear at Luke, who braces himself to counter the oncoming strike. Spectators watch in shock, shouting in disbelief at the overwhelming power displayed, far beyond what an F-rank mock battle should show. Leo admits Luke is skilled, even surpassing the fighters they train, while Luke wonders if the instructor's praise is meant to encourage him, so he won't lose heart against such strength. Luke cautiously considers that Leo might be setting a trap. Knowing the veteran instructor is skilled in mind games, Leo laughs, confident Luke is pushed to his limit just dodging, and declares he will end the fight now. Leo declares the fight is over as he unleashes a powerful attack, but Luke's focused gaze reveals he's ready to seize his chance. Magic energy gathers in Luke's hand, signaling a counterattack is imminent. He charges forward with a fierce strike, shouting the name of his spell, but Luke quickly casts barrier magic, creating a swirling shield that blocks the assault. The force of the attack sends shockwaves through the ground, but Luke stands firm behind his defense. He bursts into laughter, surprised and confused as his attack is completely stopped. His eyes widen in disbelief, and he instinctively raises his hand to strike again, but the barrier holds strong. Trapped inside an invisible magical cage, Leo panics, unable to move or see the barrier. Luke calmly assesses the situation, noting the barrier's strength and that Leo cannot overpower it. Leo, sweating and desperate, realizes this must be barrier magic, a rare and advanced technique used only by a few elite guild members, making it almost impossible for him to break free. Leo roars defiantly, vowing to break through the barrier no matter what. He challenges Mia to witness his heroic feat as he charges forward, smashing the barrier with relentless force, determined to destroy it whether it's magic or not. The crowd watches in confusion and concern, whispering about the instructor's reckless actions. Luke wonders if Leo's confidence is a bluff, noting that no one can see the barrier magic due to soundproofing, making the scene look strange from outside. Luke steadies himself, deciding this is his chance. He plans to release the barrier magic just before impact and strike Leo with a fireball. Leo struggles inside the unyielding barrier, confused by what's happening. He unleashes a massive fireball, drawing gasps of awe and fear from the onlookers. Leo's face twists in terror, realizing that if the fireball hits, it means certain death. Luke commits everything to a single strike, his hand glowing with magical energy as he launches his attack. The force of his blow surges forward, cutting through the air with overwhelming power. The crowd erupts in excitement, shouting and cheering as Luke's strike crashes toward Leo, who braces himself in shock. The tension mounts as everyone wonders who will emerge victorious. Leo, drenched in sweat and desperate, suddenly raises both hands in a gesture of surrender. Shocking the onlookers, spectators and guards alike notice the instructor's unexpected pose, questioning if he is truly giving up. Luke, stunned, hesitantly asks if this means he has won. Leo repeatedly nods behind the magical barrier, confirming the surrender. The crowd roars as the announcer declares Luke the winner, leaving him wide-eyed and overwhelmed by his victory. The announcer declares the rank-up exam concluded, praising the battle as splendid. Two men celebrate the victory, one congratulating the other for succeeding. The crowd roars in amazement, stunned by the incredible magic displayed. Spectators question what kind of monster could defeat an instructor from one of the 5 great guilds. Nearby, a woman and a man watch with satisfaction, confident in the outcome. The victorious man reflects on how close the fight was and acknowledges the talent involved. Understanding why Silua was desperate, the young man feels relieved, confident he will safely rank up to E rank. The man with the tattoo contemplates the difficulty ahead, but invites the young man to join their guild after graduating. Suddenly, the tattooed man reacts with shock, recognizing the young man from before. Onlookers also express surprise, claiming they've seen him previously. A striking woman named Sally, the number 2 of the Royal Capital Dungeon Conquering Association, approaches. She commands the exam to be paused, expressing interest in the young man's magic and wanting to verify its authenticity herself. Her presence hints at a deeper connection, as the narration suggests birds of a feather flock together. She emphasizes that this matter concerns the reputation of the Royal Capital Dungeon Conquering Association. 2 men sprint desperately through the forest, gasping for breath. One laments that they won't reach the exam venue in time from the suburbs and can't believe Luke had his rank-up exam today. Suddenly, they stop, sensing something unusual. The men turn sharply as a terrifying pack of monstrous wolves and bats rushes toward them through the trees. The creature's snarls and screeches fill the air, forcing the men to brace for impact. Panic erupts as the men shout to hide, but the monsters close and fast. They stumble and fall, overwhelmed by the sheer number of beasts. The exam venue looms just ahead, but the danger is immediate and dire. Back at the exam site, the young man calmly states he wants to confirm something directly. Sally, the woman with horns and a large weapon, challenges him, accusing him of using magic far too powerful for an F rank. She demands to fight him, declaring his magic clearly strange. Sally demands to know if he's hiding any magic-amplifying tools, insisting she must see his power firsthand to believe it. She declares she'll judge by fighting him herself. The young man hesitates but insists his power is natural and nothing special. He resolves that he can't rank up while under suspicion and decides to fight to prove himself. The crowd gasps in shock and disbelief, questioning if the Reaper is foolish and warning him not to get cocky after his lucky win against the instructor. The crowd urges Sally to teach him a lesson, but the exam official asks if both parties are ready. Sally and the young man confirm they are ready anytime. Their eyes lock with determination as Sally smiles confidently, saying, "In that case." The official announces a mock battle to verify Luke's magic. Raising his hand to signal the start, both Luke and Sally react with surprise. From the stands, a voice senses something approaching from the direction of the throne as the arena fills with spectators watching the tense moment. The arena wall shatters violently as a swarm of bats and wolves burst through the rubble. Rushing toward the crowd, Luke watches the chaos unfold, stunned by the sudden monstrous invasion. Sally grips her spear tightly, shouting in alarm as the monsters pour in through the broken wall. Luke's expression hardens as he processes the threat. Panic erupts among the spectators as people scream and scramble to escape the attacking creatures. A heavily armored guard rushes towards Sally, apologizing for the delayed warning that a massive number of monsters are approaching from a dungeon. Sally turns sharply at the call. The swarm of bats overwhelms the defenders, forcing them to shield themselves as the creatures close in. Leo casts a protective spell, but the pressure mounts. A man urgently orders everyone to brace for impact, while the crowd reacts in shock and fear, realizing they may not hold out much longer. The arena wall shatters violently, sending debris flying as the crowd gasps in shock and fear. Monsters pour through the breach, causing chaos and panic among the spectators. An old man and two others scream in terror, overwhelmed by the sudden destruction. Sally steps forward, her expression fierce and determined as she grips her weapon tightly. She reassures everyone not to panic, declaring her presence to calm the crowd. She commands the conquerors to confidently repel the monsters and evacuate the people to safety, urging them to follow Leo and Suero's guidance. The crowd responds with relief and determination. Ready to follow her lead, Leo charges forward, shouting a battle cry as he attacks the monsters relentlessly. Leo opens an escape route through the rubble, calling everyone to follow him to safety. People rush through the newly cleared path, expressing gratitude and relief. Former conqueror Suero stands ready to defend the venue, while others prepare to fight alongside Leo. A man casts a protective spell, rallying the defenders with a call to action in the name of the conquerors. A sudden explosion tears through the arena wall, shocking the crowd as a young man assesses the overwhelming number of monsters. He resolves to defeat them steadily, knowing he can't take them all out at once. Fierce beasts leap forward, roaring as they advance relentlessly. The young man, sweating but determined, acknowledges the speed of the monsters and the difficulty in hitting them. Spectators cheer for him, calling him cool, while he vows to protect those who cannot fight. Suddenly, a monster lunges toward him, catching his attention. The beast charges at two frightened onlookers, but the young man notices one monster from earlier is still alive. He swiftly moves to intercept the attack, blocking the monster's strike with a pained grunt. With a powerful swing, he strikes the monster down, bringing relief to the crowd behind him. He warns to ensure every monster is fully defeated and cautions against reckless self-sacrifice, though a hint of concern crosses his face as he contemplates the ongoing battle. A man smiles warmly, encouraging the young fighter to become strong enough to protect everyone. Two girls excitedly thank Silua-sama, while a woman with horns watches a massive horde of monsters approaching, estimating 300 to 500 of them. Inside the exam venue, the horned woman notes most civilians have been evacuated, but defeating all monsters will take time. She orders Silua to handle the remaining enemies inside. Telling Luke to escape, Luke doubts Sally can handle the monsters outside alone. but Silua confidently accepts the task. Silua smirks, then crosses her arms defiantly, prompting a surprised reaction from Luke. Suddenly, she unleashes a powerful breath attack, catching him off guard. He activates a fierce body enhancement, entering a berserker state. She declares no matter how many weaklings gather, they cannot defeat her, and vows to annihilate all the monsters. Explosions erupt violently around a circular arena, shaking the ground as a fierce, maniacal laugh echoes. A battle-hardened woman with horns and a large axe grins wildly, reveling in the destruction she's causing. The young man watches the chaos with disbelief, calling the destructive power unbelievable. Another figure, calm and confident, explains this is not just raw power but something more. Surrounded by flying bats, the young man contemplates wiping out the remaining monsters now that everyone else is left. Suddenly, a massive burst of flame erupts from above, engulfing the arena in a blinding inferno. The horned woman shields herself, shocked and questioning the nature of this overwhelming magic. As the smoke clears, the young man stands resolute amid the defeated monsters. He acknowledges the incredible feat and urges haste to follow the horned woman, warning that monsters still remain nearby. In the town of Runork, battered conquerors stand guard, having protected the spectators. The crowd reacts with shock upon spotting a group including Suero and Leo, both looking tattered while the rest remain unharmed. Questions arise about what happened to them. A young man urgently asks what happened to Suero and Leo. Leo calmly explains that a large number of monsters suddenly appeared from the forest beyond the exam venue, forcing them to hurry back while protecting the spectators. The crowd gasps in disbelief at the news of a massive monster outbreak. A map reveals Runork as the closest town to the exam venue. With monsters seeking new prey, the town faces a high possibility of attack, shown by scenes of chaos as monsters assault terrified civilians. Concerned onlookers express horror at the situation. A man explains that Sally, Silua, and Luke, the number 2 of the Royal Capital Dungeon Conquering Association, are fighting nearby. Their combined strength is extraordinary and expected to deplete most of the monster's forces. Confusion spreads as people react to the mention of the Reaper Luke, questioning if it's really him. One man vehemently protests, understanding Sally and Silua but insisting Luke is a low-ranked burden unfit to protect the town. He declares this a crisis and bad luck for the town to rely on Luke. A woman named Erin and a Union chief arrive. Condemning the harsh words, Erin defends Luke, revealing he has been conquering dungeons solo and possesses enough power to protect the town. She urges everyone to believe in him, supported by Mia's presence. A man confronts the doubters, demanding respect for Luke's sacrifices and challenges a skeptic about the sword at his waist. Accusing him of being a fellow conqueror, the Union chief tries to calm the crowd, promising to fight with his specialty A-rank magic if needed, but gets hit in the back by an annoyed companion. The crowd murmurs anxiously as the group stands firm. The Union chief insists this is no time for arguments and reassures everyone they have a plan, warning that monsters might attack if the town becomes dungeonified. The plan is set. Skilled conquerors will defend the town while reinforcements gather from nearby towns. Civilians will evacuate safely with conqueror escorts to other towns and by ship. Erin is ordered to follow the emergency manual and coordinate the evacuation. The Union chief calls Suero and Leo aside, signaling a serious discussion. The Union chief reveals there are no high-ranking conquerors left in town. All are out conquering dungeons or away. He asks for opinions on the town's fate. A scarred man grimly predicts the town of Runork will fall due to the overwhelming number of monsters. Another man agrees, saying the town won't last a day against the monster numbers. The Union chief reacts with shock, asking if it's really that bad. The scarred man explains that while strong fighters exist from the Royal Capital Dungeon Conquering Association, Sally's berserker fighting style damages her body, making her unsuitable for long battles against large groups. He warns that Sally might not be enough. The group resolves to proceed with evacuation preparations, refusing to be pessimistic. Amid the chaos, townsfolk cry and cling to each other in fear. An elderly woman weeps for her town while a mother comforts her baby. People rush to board ships reinforced against monsters. 2 girls tremble in fear, one tearfully admitting she doesn't want to die. The heavy weight of impending disaster hangs over the fleeing villagers. A desperate cry pierces the air as a terrified woman screams for help. A determined young man and a blonde companion rush toward the source of the distress. They race through a rugged landscape, closing in on the danger. The woman with horns, Sally, fiercely attacks a monstrous beast with electrified strikes, slicing through it. She reflects on the abnormal rapid expansion of dungeons and the endless flood of monsters overwhelming her. Her expression shifts to shock as she senses something unexpected. Sally's body trembles violently, her breath ragged as the strain of her berserker mode intensifies. She feels her body nearing its breaking point, but knows releasing the power would leave the monsters unchecked. The berserker effect boosts her abilities, but rapidly drains her stamina and magic. Amid peaceful village scenes, Sally's heavy breathing and sweat reveal her exhaustion. She pushes forward, rallying herself not to falter. Surrounded by a horde of monsters, she vows to protect her hometown of Runork at any cost. The young man and his companions sprint toward the battle, ready to aid her. Two figures rush through a cavern littered with countless monster corpses. One asks if Sally is ahead, and the other says they should see her soon. Suddenly, Sally appears, exhausted and trembling, barely holding her weapon as she gasps for breath. The young man calls out her name in shock. Sally admits her body is at its limit. Able to manage only one more strike, she resolves to unleash her full power with a fierce determination, gripping her axe tightly and shouting a challenge to the monsters. She swings her weapon upward, releasing a blinding burst of energy that radiates outward. The force scatters the monsters, sending them flying and howling in pain as the light envelopes the area. Gasping for air, Sally wonders if her attack successfully weakened the monsters. Suddenly, she notices a new threat. A pack of wolves advancing, using the corpses of other monsters as shields. Overwhelmed and on the verge of collapse, she struggles to stand, realizing she can't go on much longer. Ian conjures a powerful fireball, shielding Sally as he unleashes it against the advancing monsters. Sally, shocked, asks if there are any people or towns ahead. Ian replies that the area is restricted with falling rocks but seems uncertain. Sally, surprised, declares she can go all out now. Sally demands to know what Ian is, urging him to run since he's only an F-rank conqueror. Ian prepares a massive spell, determined to annihilate all the monsters. A nearby observer is stunned, noting the sheer scale of Ian's magic and how even the charging alone engulfs the monsters. Ian intensifies his attack, casting a fierce flame burst with focused determination. The flames spiral outward, cutting through the monsters relentlessly. The flame burst continues to sweep across the battlefield, creating a devastating whirlwind of fire that scatters the monsters in its path, overwhelming them with sheer force. Ian's massive flame burst cuts through the monsters, sending them flying in all directions with a fierce roar. The fiery whirlwind slices relentlessly, overwhelming the beasts as they scream in agony. Sally and Ian exchange shocked glances, their expressions tense as the fiery storm continues to rage. The ground cracks beneath the swirling flames, the destructive force shaking the battlefield. The monsters howl in pain as the firestorm intensifies, their bodies engulfed in the blazing vortex. Nearby soldiers and onlookers stare in disbelief, caught off guard by the overwhelming power unleashed. Smoke rises in the distance, drawing the attention of the crowd who wonder if the source is Sally or a dragon. Ian recognizes the immense power and urgently commands his men to investigate immediately. Several hours later, Sally and Ian stand together in a quiet, rocky area, the aftermath of the battle settling around them. A man praises Sally and Luke for their success, calling it well done. Sally, bruised and battered, admits the opponent was monstrous. It's revealed that about 90% of the approaching monsters were wiped out, the rest fled, and the town is now safe. Only a few people, excluding Sally, suffered minor scratches. The source of the monsters remains under investigation. The exam venue was destroyed, prompting the man to ask about Luke exam results. Sally responds with a confident smile, dismissing doubts about Luke power as foolish. After witnessing the destruction firsthand, she confirms he passed the exam. The scene shows a massive chasm carved into the earth, evidence of the large-scale spell used. The man smiles, acknowledging that such a spell on the spot is impossible even with tricks. She remarks that even the advanced magic shown in the mock battle wasn't Luke full power. The man laughs, finding it interesting, and expresses gladness that he was acknowledged. Outside, Luke sneezes, feeling an itch in his nose just as congratulations arrive for his promotion to E-rank. The morning after the rank-up exam, at an inn in Runork, the hero of the town sleeps soundly, surrounded by books. A sudden knock at the door rouses him, and he wonders who could be visiting so early. A lively woman bursts in, shouting a cheerful good morning and urging Luke to wake up, saying everyone is waiting for him. Despite his surprise, she insists he come along, pushing him out the door. Luke steps into a room where two women stand smiling. One with horns and long black hair, the other elegant and poised. They thank him for protecting the town from monsters. Luke is stunned, barely able to process the warm welcome and gratitude. More people appear behind the women, all gathered to express thanks for defeating the monsters. The horned woman explains that those who couldn't come sent their regards. And this is why they gathered here? Luke reacts with surprise, overwhelmed by the heartfelt appreciation. Luke insists it wasn't just his power that saved the town, but everyone's combined strength. The man with light hair urges Luke not to be modest and says he came to express his gratitude. The horned woman thanks everyone for gathering but reminds them that many in town are still cautious. With schools closed and people refraining from going outside, the town is peaceful, with children happily baking cookies and families enjoying meals together. The mood is light as townsfolk finally feel relief that daily life has returned. Sally smiles warmly, telling Luke she couldn't have defended against the monsters alone and thanks him for protecting their hometown. Luke looks at her, moved, while a tearful child quietly expresses emotion. In a lively tavern, an older man remarks on how much Sally has grown from a mischievous troublemaker covered in dirt as a child. Sally playfully protests the comment. She then tells Luke there is one more thing he should know. She recalls doubting Luke's magic at first because it was too strong, but after witnessing it up close during battle, she knew it was real. Sally congratulates Luke on passing the special exam and ranking up to E rank. Luke is surprised but relieved, smiling brightly as the man who thanked him earlier enthusiastically praises his achievement. The scene ends with Luke feeling official and proud of his new rank. Erin rushes and holding a freshly baked pie, calling out to Luke with excitement. She congratulates him on ranking up, and the room brightens with the announcement. Erin invites everyone to toast with the delicious pies she baked herself. Luke takes a bite, savoring the taste and declaring it delicious. Luke praises Erin's cooking talent, and she beams with pride, happy she practiced. Mia eagerly grabs a pie to share with Luke, but Alyssa warns her to calm down, assuring there's plenty left, nearby. A couple admires a drink, impressed by its quality and curious about its ingredients. Erin cheerfully explains that Luke's new rank will make it easier for him to find work, celebrating his achievement. A man holding a drink questions if Erin is misunderstanding the situation. He clarifies that conquerors can only accept requests up to one rank above their own, showing the rank chart. Thanks to Luke becoming E rank, he can now accept D, E, and F rank requests. Luke reacts with shock as he learns that despite ranking up, the job opportunities and treatment remain nearly the same. Erin explains that self-taught conquerors have low status, causing clients to be wary. Luke realizes the treatment hasn't improved since he was F rank, leaving him stunned as the Union Chief closes the door behind him. The Union Chief arrives unexpectedly, prompting a sharp question about his presence. He awkwardly tries to express gratitude for saving the town but quickly shifts to demand an explanation of the current situation. Erin attempts to respond, but the chief dismisses her and insists on hearing more. Nearby, others confirm that what Suero says is accurate. The chief reflects that the last special exam was held before Erin started working, explaining her lack of knowledge on the matter. The Union Chief explains that being a conqueror is dangerous, and while anyone can claim to be an F-rank conqueror, achieving E-rank requires significant accomplishment. He emphasizes that E-rank status means gaining experience and risking one's life. However, the special exam requires a guild master's recommendation letter, which is difficult to obtain. The chief reveals the exam system mainly benefits wealthy children. Shocked, Erin listens as the chief elaborates that low-rank conquerors find guild masters unreachable, making recommendation letters a pipe dream. Wealthy or powerful families can secure these letters for their children, allowing even those without real ability to take the special exam. This has led to many people falsely claiming E-rank status through connections. Thus, passing the special exam at E-rank still doesn't prove true ability. A man angrily demands the abolition of the fraudulent system, but the Union Chief insists he didn't create it and that it has existed for ages. He explains that the special exam is now under scrutiny, with preliminary assessments to determine eligibility. Mia thoroughly examined his status during the exam. Despite reduced fraud, E-rank conquerors still face client skepticism. The chief sighs, acknowledging this harsh reality. A young man reassures Luke-san, telling him that ranking up quickly is a good thing and expresses gratitude for learning about the special exam. Luke-san, feeling apologetic as a self-taught conqueror who struggles to find work, is told not to apologize and is thanked warmly. Encouraged, Luke-san is reminded that everyone has walked this path and is making slow but steady progress. Luke-san reflects that despite being called the Reaper in town, there are people who genuinely care about him. He feels the need to be grateful and vows to work hard to become a proper conqueror. The group shares a light moment, but Luke-san's expression shifts as he admits he's always wondered about something. He-san contemplates why self-taught conquerors are disliked by society, partly due to some rowdy individuals, yet acknowledges there are serious and skilled self-taught conquerors as well. He questions why the low status of self-taught conquerors is intentionally maintained, suggesting that improving their treatment could alleviate public safety issues caused by poverty. The town of Runork has regained its peace, With renewed determination, he heads to the Union building. Today marks his first job hunt since ranking up to E rank. Though he's heard it's not much different from F rank, he wonders how it will go. At the Union counter, a cheerful woman greets him, surprised he's already looking for requests. He explains that since ranking up, he thought there might be some quests he could take. She eagerly offers to look through the requests right away, flipping through a large book. After searching, she sadly closes the book, revealing there are no suitable requests. He asks if there's any other way to rank up specially like he did from F rank to E rank, but she hasn't heard of any. He then inquires if there are any requests to take on an entire dungeon again, though it seems unlikely. The woman worries aloud about him going to conquer a dungeon solo again. Acknowledging his unprecedented strength but expressing concern, she urges him to be very careful, not wanting him to die. He promises to be cautious as she flips through the request book once more. She spreads out a large number of request forms, surprising him with how many there are now. He recalls last time he could only choose from about 3, but now that he can take up to D rank, there are over a dozen. She warns him to be careful since people usually go in parties and the difficulty has increased. He scans the papers carefully, deciding on one request to take. He considers the dungeon requests all far from Runork, each requiring about a week on foot through rural areas. He thinks distant dungeons aren't worth it unless the reward is high or there are other benefits. But there aren't. It's more efficient to take multiple nearby requests than spend time traveling. She prepares the request form for him, but he suddenly asks her to wait. He worries about spending 2 weeks just traveling and asks if there are any nearby dungeons reachable in about a day. She explains such requests are usually taken by large guilds first, and even if there were nearby ones, the rewards would be lower. Large guilds secure better requests before general introduction, on condition they handle many requests yearly. He admits it's tough that there are no good requests but asks her to check if there are any other dungeons. Even if the difficulty is a bit higher, she finds just one nearby dungeon, though the reward isn't great. He looks at the form with a serious expression, realizing the challenge ahead. He studies a request for a dungeon in Ruado village reachable within a day, marked as D-rank difficulty with a reward of 250,000 gold. He notes this barely covers a 5-person party but thinks he can conquer it solo. Even if the reward is low, handling it alone means good money. His eyes catch a guarantee fee on the form, prompting a closer look. Shock hits him as he reads the guarantee fee is 500,000 gold. Twice the reward. Nearby villagers wonder why the fee is so high. She explains the request isn't issued by the Union but by Ruado village itself, which likely set the high fee. A diagram shows 2 types of Union requests. Those received directly with a 100,000 gold fee, and those routed through the Union from others with no fee. He questions why Ruado village demands such a steep guarantee fee, suspecting trouble with conquerors. She says lowering the fee would require negotiation with the village, practically impossible. He recalls having about 500,000 gold from conquering Marcel village's dungeon but knows no conqueror who haggles over fees is trusted. If he deposits the 500,000 gold and fails, he loses it all and is left with almost nothing. He contemplates which dungeon to choose. 2 dungeon options appear. Ruado village dungeon, D rank, 250,000 gold reward, 500,000 gold guarantee fee, 1 day away. And Meta Village Dungeon, E rank, 260,000 gold reward, 100,000 gold guarantee fee, 1 week away. He realizes Ruado Village is a 2-day round trip with harsher conditions than Meta Village, which takes 2 weeks round trip. He pauses, considering the difficult choice ahead. The request form for Ruado Village's dungeon lies tattered, raising suspicion that large guilds have been avoiding it. He studies the worn papers carefully, pondering the harsh conditions and wondering what fate befell the village's people. A grim scene of villagers suffering under dark skies fills his mind. As he questions if they still endure, waiting for the dungeon to be conquered, the Union woman explains that with a 250,000 gold reward but a 500,000 gold penalty for failure, everyone judges it safer not to touch this request. He quietly acknowledges the risk and the lack of takers. Resolute, he declares himself the only one capable of conquering Ruado village's dungeon and demands to take the request. The Union woman, surprised but impressed by his firm resolve, agrees to arrange it despite the difficulty. He holds the request form with determination, ready to face the challenge. Alone, he reflects on accepting the solo conquest on impulse and the need to mentally prepare. Suddenly, a cheerful woman calls out to him, greeting him warmly as Leon. She says she came to the Union on an errand and suggests they talk outside, marking a timely encounter. A cheerful woman congratulates him on ranking up to E rank, saying Roddy and she heard the news and were delighted. He thanks them and mentions Roddy should arrive soon. She notices his injuries and asks if he's okay. He explains he's learning basics at the self-taught guild and training by fighting in low-difficulty dungeons with the party. He shows his wounds, saying they come from that training and credits Luke for teaching him courage to fight. She beams with determination, declaring that these injuries are nothing compared to the goal of becoming as strong as Luke. His surprised expression shows how much her resolve impresses him. Reflecting, she recalls how hard it is to believe he was once so afraid of monsters. She notes how much he has grown since they first met. He happily admits he can't get enough of defeating monsters and eagerly looks forward to the next dungeon conquest. Meanwhile, a small character watches with a mischievous expression. Suddenly, Roddy arrives, greeted warmly by the group. Roddy warns not to underestimate him, the self-taught guild examiner, and boasts that at this rate, he might soon surpass Roddy's abilities. Roddy congratulates Luke on passing the rank-up exam, and Luke thanks him, surprised and pleased by the recognition. Roddy admits surprised that Luke has already attracted the attention of the Royal Capital Dungeon Conquering Association, but firmly insists he will never hand Luke over, knowing Luke's best qualities inside and out. His emotional declaration overwhelms Luke, who feels the closeness of Roddy's protective grip. He clings tightly to Luke, declaring the self-taught guild will claim him, while a woman nearby agrees they can't let the sparkly folks take Luke. The pressure of the situation weighs heavily on Luke as the union chief and others ask if he was able to take a request today, confirming he came to the union seeking work. He explains a last resort method involving taking on an entire dungeon request, crediting Luke for teaching him this approach. Luke reveals he'll be going solo again, with the dungeon located near Ruado village. The group reacts with shock and concern at the mention of this place, especially Roddy, whose expression darkens. He urgently warns Luke about Ruado village and hands him a small vial of medicine. Luke catches the vial with surprise, wondering about its meaning and origin as the gravity of the situation settles in.